Good afternoon, teachers, and magandang hapon po sa inyong lahat. Good afternoon, Sir Jambi.
Good afternoon, Sir Franco. Ba't tinanggal mo yung ano, yung ikatlo nating kasama sa script?
Medyo nakakailang no na andun yung mukha ko sa poster natin. Pero anyway, magandang hapon po teachers no and welcome to our stream for this afternoon. This is the sixth installment of our September series no and kahit po medyo maulan, okay, ngayon medyo umuulan po dito sa aming area no, so we hope you're safe, okay? And to our public school teachers, congratulations po for your second week no, pangalawang week na nila Sir Jambi.
Wow, ang bilis,
Into the
ano?
second pandemic school year. Congratulations po. Maraming salamat sa patuloy na pakikinig at pagsama po sa amin sa ating mga live stream. Yun. Silent moment. Now, anyway, Sir Jambi, no, let's first greet our teachers. Greet our teachers from the chat. You may want to start, Sir Jambi, at habulin na lang kita. Kukunti pa lang naman yung nasa chat natin so we can actually start from the first one as early as 1:11 p.m. nun. So, pinakauna po sa atin. Go ahead, Sir Jambi. You start first.
Sige, my pleasure and my honor kasi nga tulad ng isang realization natin, baka ito yung isa sa mga bagay na ano na nakakapag lift ng spirits ng ating mga teacher. So wag natin ipagkait sa kanila. Gusto natin batiin si Teacher Maria Lani Suaberon. Ayan, good afternoon po. Yung sinasabi ni Sir Franco na 1:11 p.m. pa lang ay bumati na sa atin. Teacher Diana Kitay. Teacher Lord Lena, maayong hapon din po sa inyo. Teacher Altman L. Cabardo. Ganda ng pangalan ni Sir, no? And Teacher Lamberto Pilatan Jr. Ayan, watching daw from Iloilo. Teacher Pea Librios. Good afternoon din po. Teacher Rhea Marie Robas. Teacher Glenda Aloran. Teacher Eileen Medina watching from Cagayan. Teacher Ronalyn Daloho watching from Palawan. Wow, hello po sa inyo. Teacher Erlito Galin Jr. watching from Oriental, Mindoro naman. Parang ikutin natin yung buong Pilipinas today, bro. Teacher Milay Dalingay from Baguio City. Ayan, where yan daw ang pambansang puntahan ng mga friends, ng mga magkakaibigan.
Yan na.
Teacher Jennifer Sorsogon, good afternoon. Teacher Rolinda Borja, wow, La Petite Learning Center, Cainta, Rizal. And teacher, correct. Well, ito na yung huli para sa akin. Siguro nahabol mo naman na, Sir Franco. Teacher Edna Deschi, watching from SDO Camarines Sur.
Yes. Okay. Parang sarap pumunta dyan sa Camarines Sur na Sir Jampi. Good afternoon to Teacher Nelly Austria, Teacher Sheila Priscillas from Baguio City din. Okay. Ang dami na sa Baguio ngayon. No? Friends lang po tayo dyan, ha? Marisa Gumabong, maayong hapon sa Ato Natanan. Elnora Logares, okay, from Nueva Vizcaya. Teacher Manolito White, no? Expect ulit natin, no? Si Teacher Manolito White ng mga insights, na sobrang ganda ng mga insights.
Correct.
Generous sa mga webinars. Yes. Very, very generous na sharing her insights and ideas as well. Okay. Teacher Louis Jacob, yan. Parang dire-diretso na si Teacher Louis, no? Kasi medyo matagal na wala si Teacher Louis sa live stream natin. Teacher Leocel Villantes, Teacher Jenny Rose, Teacher Maria Cecilia Flores, Teacher Megs Dongenes Hanoy, okay? Teacher Lilibet Nibres, okay? Teacher Osmar Mercado, Teacher Priscilla Montalba from SDO QCG Tamo ES or Elementary School. Teacher Grace Barduque, Teacher Mary Grace Baste, Teacher Elda Gonzalez from Zamboanga City, Teacher M.A. Abigan, good afternoon po. Teacher, don't say my name. Yes, from the City of Love, okay, Teacher Justin May Adamas, okay, and Teacher Flory Perez, okay, and of course, I'll be ending my part with Teacher Pastor Manny Garcia, who's always with us, okay, blessing our live streams, okay, from Imos City, Cavite. Go ahead, Sir Jamie.
Pwede pa tayo magtuloy.
Yes.
Teacher Luciana Lusada, good morning. Oh, good morning. Baka sales nasa sales si ma'am, gano'n. Gano'n daw, 'di ba? Palaging good morning
Good
para
morning lagi.
palaging good mood palagi. Good afternoon naman po kay Teacher Maria Gypsy Desquitado. Good afternoon as well all the way from Bacoor City, Cavite, Teacher Toyvoa VL. Naku, sana tama yung bababanggit ko. Teacher Mira S. Ramos, Teacher Arlene de la Cruz, Teacher Edna Ricafort, Teacher Jeneline Potestas, Teacher Alea Rose Vasquez, Teacher Ria Therese Binya from SDO Masbate, Teacher Charmaine Joy Quizon, meron pang Adventures and More. Teacher Elaine Belay, good afternoon. Teacher Kayen, magandang hapon din po sa inyo. Meron pa siya, sa wakas nakaabot din sa live. Sir Franco, gandahan mo yung ano natin yung webinar natin ngayon kasi
Nakaka-pressure naman yun, no? Kung kailan nag-live Teacher Kayen. Sana ma-meet natin yung standard Teacher Kayen.
Of course, ayan. Teacher Beverly Joy Quahaw from CHSEC Tagbilaran City Division, Teacher Estrelita Hechanova, watching from Dampol Second National High School, Pulilan, Bulacan. APL slideshows na-figure out mo na ba, Sir Frank?
Natanong na natin I think last time, baka hindi ko lang natandaan. Kaysa pakilagay ulit na para matandaan natin siya, no? Para hindi APL slideshows yung pag-greet natin sa kanya.
Good afternoon po sa inyo. Good afternoon to Teacher Ronaldin Daloho, Teacher Charito Ferrer from Malolos, Bulacan, Teacher Arjoax Fampulme, tama kaya yun? From Batangas City. Uy, masarap mag-lomi ngayon. Kanina pa namin pinag-uusapan. Tatapusin ko na with Teacher Richard Rosilio. Good afternoon po sa inyong lahat.
Of course, our last stretch na ang ating greetings, Teacher Benny Israel, Teacher Christian Aragones, Teacher Mar Dumagtoy, Teacher Elizabeth Calma, Teacher Grace Garduque, Teacher Pastor Man is also there again. Nawala ako, umakyat yung aking kandila.
Dumami
Biglang dumami, no? Teacher, ayun, okay. Good afternoon, Teacher Ronaldo Gonzalez, kay Joseph Odilon Hermotanya, always here as well. Teacher Alex Javier Alvarez, Teacher Roseler Cabasag, Professor Godfrey G. Mendoza, Teacher Joseph Odilon, ayun, nabanggit ko na pa. Teacher Grace Garduque, Teacher Rose May Bandolon, Teacher Ronaldin Daloho, and Teacher Lorena Villano, and our last na greeting to Teacher Christy Mohammed. Okay, I think baka nilagay na ng Teacher APL ang kanyang pangalan sa chat. No? Baka hindi kailangan, o baka wag natin, baka sekreto. Okay. Sir Javi, okay? Siguro bago tayo mag-start, of course, no, is, and I go into my session, is that, well, let's put first into context, no, itong topic natin for today. Ikaw ba, any idea about this concept of Bichronous approach?
Ako, syempre, nag-research tayo dyan, Sir Franco. Mga 2 minutes bago tayo mag-umpisa, napabasa bigla ako. Although, na-share mo naman na sa akin the other day, what Bichronous approach is all about. Ako siguro, without having heard your presentation yet, siguro ito yung, kumbaga, tatapos dun sa debate na ano ba yung mas dapat, 'di ba? Ano ba yung mas maganda? Ano ba, 100% synchronous ba? May advantages din ba yung yung asynchronous na learning? So, why not, ayan nga, why not blending them together? Yan. So, kumbaga getting the best of both worlds. And ako, binabanggit ko sa iyo, Sir Franco, kanina, feeling ko ito ang future of education. Kumbaga, nandun pa tayo sa nandun pa tayo sa maraming magulang tsaka maraming mga teachers din na naniniwala pa rin doon sa sa synchronous, naniniwala pa din doon sa face to face. Kumbaga hindi pa natin masyadong maarok, hindi pa natin masyadong mapagkatiwalaan yung mga sarili siguro natin sa asynchronous. So perhaps ito talaga yung ito yung logical step and maybe yun nga the perfect combination of both synchronous and asynchronous.
Actually, teachers, yun na po ang ating webinar.
Yun na yung
Just kidding.
webinar. Labas natin yung yung evaluation.
Evaluation link na po ang kasunod nito. No? Yun, maraming salamat, Sir Jamin. Tama, tama. No? Actually, yun yung natin, context natin no, for doing this. And Sir Jambi, there's a reason why we put this session no, in our recharge series for September. It's because we believe, no, naniniwala talaga tayo na itong Bichronous approach is hindi na bago. Okay? Ito ay ginagawa. Okay? Ginagamit na ng mga teachers natin. For example, may nakikita na ako sa audience natin sa chat natin, actually giving definitions, insights about Bichronous approach. Okay? Siguro lang, Sir Jambi, no, ang gagawin natin para sa araw talaga nito is really about recontextualization at redefinition of Bichronous approach. At siguro, pagtatama sa ibang mga bagay no, pagdating sa pagbe-blend ng synchronous and asynchronous session. Kasi baka lang, we're trapped on the idea na kapag nag-synchronous ako at nag-asynchronous ako, nagba-bichronous approach na ako kagad. Okay? There's a big difference na Sir Jambi na nag-synchronous ako at nag-asynchronous ako compared sa nag-synchronous ako and nag-asynchronous ako with a deliberate purpose of using them together to reinforce learning on maybe the same topic or the same skill or on a continuing learning process. So yun yung gusto natin pag-usapan today. Pero again, teachers, hindi po ito bago. Okay? Actually, Sir Jambi, kahit before ng pandemic, ginagawa natin to. Yung tipong, di ba, may class ka sa loob ng classroom, tapos paglabas ng classroom, meron ka assignment, okay? Or meron kang mga reading materials. Bichronous approach yun. Okay?
Correct.
Kung saan ginagamit mo yung synchronous approach saka asynchronous approach. Okay? Pero feeling ko nga, Sir Jambi, nung before pandemic, mas blended pa ang synchronous and asynchronous to some extent. Okay? So yan yung pag-usapan ngayon. No? Uungkatin ulit natin. We'll talk about those things. Okay? And hopefully we get a clearer idea of Bichronous approach, no? Which as actually the best way to approach, no? Maybe the best way to approach okay? The online learning setup natin. And sabi nga ni Sir Jambi, way past the pandemic school year. Okay? Gagamitin pa rin natin to. Babaunin natin to pagkatapos ng pandemic. Okay? So,
Sir Franco,
Sir Jambi, yes, go
pwede
ahead,
ba
Sir Jambi.
pwede ba akong sumingit lang?
Go ahead.
Kasi yun, I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to join yung mga kaagapay natin during the panel, pero sasali si Teacher Pao sa atin mamaya. Meron lang po akong mga ideas and I don't know if kung i-discuss ito ni Sir Franco o isa ito dun sa mga pwedeng pag-usapan. Una, alam mo merong mga teachers na parang nagigilty sila ng kaunti kapag asynchronous sila. 'Di ba? Kumbaga hindi lahat definitely, pero meron tayong mga tao na may mga teachers na parang feeling nila kulang yung binibigay nila kapag asynchronous yung binibigay nila. So sana naniniwala ako na doon sa ipe-present sa atin ni Sir Franco, maipapakita niya sa atin kung how very powerful yung well-planned asynchronous activities are. Tapos pangalawa naman, marami din naman sa atin yung aminin natin, meron sa atin yung nag-synchronous, pero yung ginawa mo sa synchronous, sana nag-asynchronous ka na lang. 'Di ba? May mga ganun tayong pagkakataon kasi nga feeling mo sino-shortchange mo yung mga bata pagka asynchronous yung ginawa mo, pero nung nag-synchronous ka naman, sana in-asynchronous mo na lang. So, ito yung mga bagay na iaano sa atin ni Sir Franco. Kumbaga, i-memory niya yung dalawang kaisipan ng synchronous and asynchronous. And yun nga, how best to make use of each one's strengths and let them work together. So good luck, Sir Franco. Good luck mga
Thank you.
kaagapay.
Maraming salamat, Sir Jambi. Okay? So teachers, let's start for our session for today. Hopefully we get to finish by 4 p.m. for today. Pero again, just like always, we invite all your insights and comments into the chat. Paunlakan niyo po kami at nandiyan po si Teacher Pao si Sir Jambi po may ano lang pero kung makakabalik definitely Sir Jambi will also engage you in the chat as well. Okay? So please do let us know about your insights, your concerns, sa ano po natin, sa chat natin. Okay? And again, teachers, just like we always do, our disclaimer that we are all collaborative contributors in this discussion. Okay? So wala pong kung sino mang nakakalamang at nang nakakaalam ng lahat ng bagay. Okay? Again, what we aim to do today is again to promote discussion, and to promote exchange of ideas between us educators, and that's what we hope to do today. Okay, so again, teachers, I am Franco Di Colopiadon, your Google for Education Certified Trainer, Administrator of Kagapay Tissue Support. Okay, and we'll be talking about today Bichronous approach, the blending of synchronous and asynchronous e-learning approaches for distance learning. So yan po yung what we will cover for today. So teachers, before tayo mag-start, let's go first with our session objectives so that we are all on the same page. At alam po natin ano yung i-cover natin at hindi natin mako-cover para sa araw na ito. Okay? So for this session, what we're going to do is to evaluate the blending of synchronous and asynchronous approach for a more thorough Bichronous approach. Okay? Identify best practices for synchronous and asynchronous approach and Bichronous approach as well. Okay? So kailan dapat ginagamit si synchronous, kailan ginagamit si asynchronous, at kailan naman mas magandang gamitin yung Bichronous approach natin. Okay? So yun yung mga tatry natin gawin or pag-usapan para sa araw na ito. Okay? So let's start with first bago tayo pumunta sa ating synchronous and asynchronous and Bichronous approaches, teachers. Siyempre, i-contextualize muna natin yung ating discussion for today. Okay, ano nga ba yung reasons bakit kailangan nating i-revisit yung konsepto ng Bichronous approach? Although teachers, sinasabi ko nga po kanina na you've been doing Bichronous approach. Okay? Marami na po ako kilala. For example, I personally know that Sir Louis Jacob are doing blended approach. So they're definitely doing a Bichronous approach. Okay? For us, for example, yung mga naka-online learning setup, we are also doing a Bichronous approach. So we have Zoom meetings or Google Meet meetings, and then we give materials after class or before class. Okay? That's a Bichronous approach. Okay? Even teachers, yung pong mga nag-home visitation, yung pong mga naka-printed modules, tapos nag-visit ng mga bahay for reading test or follow up with the modules, etc. Bichronous approach din talaga yung teachers essentially. Okay? And that's we're going to clarify later. So teachers, there's really Bichronous approach is by concept maybe new to some people, but by practice it's not new. Okay? Ginagamit po nating lahat. Almost marami po sa atin ngayon ginagamit talaga yung Bichronous approach. Okay? So again, what we intend to do today is to basically recontextualize, redefine Bichronous approach, and maybe revisit some practices that maybe can be corrected, can be improved later on for a more effective approach for distance learning. Lalo na po ngayon teachers, for our teachers in the public school system na nag-start na po ng kanilang second pandemic school year. Okay? So teacher, again, paunlakan niyo po ako sa ating chat. Okay? So the first one is the first context that where I'm coming from and where this topic is coming from is the idea that there is a disconnected synchronous and asynchronous approach. Okay? So in most cases, based on my conversations, based on my observations, and based on the experiences, my experience din as an educator, and with my interaction with some teachers, there is this disconnection on synchronous and asynchronous approach. Okay? In most cases, teachers are often made to choose whether they go dominantly synchronous or dominantly asynchronous. Okay? And sometimes there's also that idea that, for example, I go for synchronous for this lesson, okay? And then for this lesson, I will go for asynchronous. Okay? So there's now a disconnect to the two approaches because it's being used in isolation, okay, to the different lessons, no, in one unit or in one semester or in one quarter, okay? So this is the first thing that we'll have to talk about later on, okay? Is this really necessary? Kailangan ba naka-compartmentalize, okay, ang paggamit natin ng synchronous and asynchronous approaches, okay, in distance learning? And how does it affect learning, okay? Okay, that's the first thing that I will try to address in this session. Okay, second is there is that linear arrangement and utilization of synchronous and asynchronous approach. Okay, so in most cases, it's all about a linear progression of synchronous now, asynchronous, 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 then synchronous session again, and so on and so forth. Okay, so is that also a beneficial way of approaching distance learning na naka-linear arrangement, okay? Or yung progression ng ating mga lessons, okay? Or sorry, ng approach natin is always in a line, okay? So one comes after another, okay? Can it be a combination of in one lesson? Say, for example, that in one lesson, you both have an asynchronous and synchronous session for that, okay? Something like that, okay? Teacher Luciana's question, is there a conceptual difference between hybrid and Bichronous classes? Okay. There is not much, no, Teacher Luciana, no. I think it's more on the terminology itself, the etymology of itself is coming from the use of synchronous and asynchronous modalities. And therefore, okay, mas ginagamit, no, yung ginamit yung word na Bichronous, no, as a term, okay, to refer to the combination of asynchronous and synchronous. Okay? So that's our second one. I hope that I was able to address that on Teacher Luciana. Okay? There's also this myth of independent learning. Okay, so teachers, okay, this is the big elephant in the room, no, that I'd like to also address. Okay? Na minsan, okay, of course, no, alam natin kung ano yung independent learning. Pinag-usapan natin yan before. So one of the goals of distance learning, okay, right now, okay, to train our students in a more independent, no, to give them a space, no, and to give them an opportunity to become independent learners. Kaya lang there's that myth right there, okay, that that so in a way, no, dominates the approaches in education na kapag ba nag-asynchronous ako, I'm already promoting independent learning. At kapag ako ba ay nag-synchronous, ibig sabihin, nag-spoon feeding ba ako ng information? Okay? Or naka-curtail ko ba yung independent learning ng aking mga estudyante? Okay? So, we're also going to unpack that later on. Okay? Na yung idea that automatically kapag naka-asynchronous, okay, we're already promoting independent learning. Okay? So, what if, for example, if the asynchronous lesson was not well designed, okay, to actually scaffold tasks, okay, to give proper instruction, will that actually provide independent learning opportunities for the students? Okay, I doubt so. So we're also going to talk about that later on. Okay, so i-demystify natin yung independent learning, no, in the context of asynchronous and synchronous learning. Okay. There's also this danger of compliance, okay? How well our synchronous and asynchronous sessions are designed, okay? In such a way that we are actually able to engage our students, okay? Na hindi lang for compliance ang submissions, okay? So, naisip ba teachers, no, we'll have to revisit once again. If, for example, if that's why there's also that's one of the reasons why, no, may tendency sometimes of preference for synchronous sessions, okay? Kasi namo-monitor natin yung mga estudyante natin. Pag may mga kailangan tayo pa-submit, nasa-submit kagad nila, okay? And sometimes, no, we are not like really into asynchronous, okay? Kasi feeling natin walang compliance masyado or nagkakaroon tayo ng ng doubt kay do sa work ng ating mga estudyante, okay? So that teachers, no, yung idea ng synchronous and asynchronous, how well have we designed our lessons, no, to actually engage our students beyond just mere compliance. Okay, so yan ang ating isa sa mga reasons, no, why we have to revisit our asynchronous. Kapag dinesign ko ba yung aking asynchronous, will my students submit And will my students actually go through my lesson, my asynchronous lesson, because it's worth going through, or is it worth studying, is it worth doing? Okay, so yun yung magiging question natin later on, no, when we talk about asynchronous approach. Okay. And of course, meron ka rin tinatawag na educational amnesia, no? Okay? This one, teachers, no, is actually coming from in relation to the institutional amnesia. Okay? Wherein we might have been so engrossed in learning, for example, tech tools. Okay? We might have been so engrossed in, for example, choosing modalities such as asynchronous or synchronous. Okay? But we might be forgetting the essential, no, or the core of what we're doing and why we're doing them. Okay? So say for example, if you're using, for example, a technology tool, no, is that tool actually being used, okay, to derive learning from our students, okay, or ginamit lang natin siya dahil siya ay popular, or siya ay will make the class active pero hindi naman talaga nag-engage, no, into the learning process. Okay? So nagkakaroon ng pagkalimot, okay? That's why it's called educational amnesia. And it's actually a term that I coined, okay? Nakakalimutan natin yung actual purpose no, why are we teaching sometimes, okay? Because of the so many things, no, that we are trying to choose from, trying to choose tools, trying to choose modalities, trying to choose approaches, no, or strategies in online learning. Pero teachers, okay, wag nating kakalimutan, okay, yung core ng online learning. Okay? At yan mamaya i-revisit ulit natin. So teachers, yan yung mga context, no, na pinanggagalingan natin why, okay, I am pursuing this topic and I am sharing this topic with you. Okay? Na hopefully ma-address natin. Okay? We will not again 100% be able to address all of them and maybe solve all of them, no. But at least we get to create a discussion that solutions can sprout from. At yun yung gusto nating gawin at mangyari today. Okay? Now, aside from the teachers, of course, we'll also now have to remember that we are still within this context of the VUCA world na sinasabi nga nila. No? Okay, actually naman, even prior to the pandemic, teachers, now we are already in the VUCA world. Okay, that the world is volatile. Okay, there is this volatility in our world. Okay, that we can't really expect things to happen the same way that it happens every time. Okay, the world now can turn directions, okay, change directions every time. Okay, and that also defines our classes, teachers. No, okay, our classes are also volatile. Okay, it's composed of many people, of instances, for example, connectivity, bigla ka na lang mawawalan ng signal, etc. No? Okay? So all of those things, okay, should also be considered. Okay? So in a macro scale, volatile yung world natin, but at the same time, our online classes is also volatile. And that's something that we also have to adapt to. Okay? Mamaya pag-usapan natin yan. Okay? Uncertainty. Okay, there is this definite uncertainties outside of our classes, inside our classes as well. Okay, we can't like fully expect everything to happen the way we want it to happen. Okay, that's there are factors that we cannot control, okay, in our classes, okay, and outside of the world, okay, that we have to prepare our students for as well. Okay, complexity, teachers, the online classes cannot just be defined by just, for example, if I do a presentation that's it already. Okay? Learning process, especially right now, is also demands so many dynamics, okay? And are actually affected by so many factors. Lalo na ngayon po mga teachers na may pandemic, okay? So say, for example, you're in a class, okay? You also have to consider, for example, how complex your class is, okay? How many factors are affecting the online learning. Say, for example, one of your student, okay, does not have a good connection. One of your student are actually exposed to COVID-19, and one of your student does not have a device at all. No, so lahat ng mga factors then actually should be considered. No, again, teachers, I'm adapting the concept of VUCA world within our online classes. We know that this concept of the VUCA world, okay, speaks about the world itself, how volatile, how uncertain, how complex the world is. Okay, but if we take that into our class as well, in our online teaching situation, that is very similar as well. Okay, you also have the concept of ambiguity. Okay, not everything has an answer. Okay? Not everything has a definite cause that can explain everything. Okay, that's the true teachers. No, that's the reason why we are constantly asked to be adaptive. Okay, and that's what we're going to use later on. No? Yung concept ng adaptability as a framework for online classes, because while we are teachers who are educators are good planners, okay, good organizers, okay, but now teachers know the online setup demands us to go beyond just be very organized, well planned. Okay, we are also being asked to be very adaptive. Okay, kasi again, sabi nga natin, the world is volatile, the world is uncertain, the world is complex, the world is ambiguous. We can't always plan for everything. Okay. So when you approach your classes, teachers, when you approach your online classes, that's also one of the things you'll have to consider, that your online classes, okay, exemplify these characteristics, that our online classes are VUCA online classes. No, okay. So again, teachers, I took that concept to and apply it into our online classes. Okay. So teachers, with that, okay, we are given these situations, and given all of these things, that surrounds us and defines our online classes. Okay, diyan po pumapasok ngayon yung isang framework that I'd like to share with you, called the adaptive design for learning. Okay, and this is a course that I took in Ateneo. Okay, this is a course given to us as educators or members of the Jesuit community. Okay, this was designed by the Ateneo SALT, and provided to the educators of the Jesuit schools, which I'd like to share to all of you kasi sobrang ganda po niya, at sobrang beneficial niya for teachers, especially in an online distance modality. Okay? So ito po, teachers, yung gagamit natin to be able to navigate in our VUCA online classes, or our very volatile, uncertain, complex, ambiguous online classes. Okay? So yan yung gusto nating gawin, teachers. No? I-adapt natin, or we'll use this framework called the adaptive design for learning, or otherwise known as ADL. Okay? So teachers, let's now move on. Basically, ADL is a framework used by Ateneo for online learning or for distance learning. Okay, and there are 5 important factors or principles of the adaptive design for learning, as made and constructed, by Ateneo. Okay, and the first one is called adaptability. Okay, adaptability and design and delivery. Okay, so it's not just about adaptability and design. Okay, kailangan pati yung delivery natin adaptive din. Okay, so that it can navigate in the volatility, the uncertainty, the complexity, and the ambiguity of our classes. Okay. Second, teachers, second principle is active and interactive learning. Okay. It's all about making your classes come to life. Okay, it's about engaging your students. Okay, before we had sessions on student engagement, because we have to engage our students. Okay, our students have to constantly engage our content, our processes, and to constantly come up with different outputs from our classes. Okay. Third one is the 3 C's of online learning. Okay? Understanding the 3 C's of online learning, teachers, allows us to better understand, how do we conduct online classes. Okay? And of course, yung ating yung topic for today, which is the asynchronous and synchronous, the relationship of the two, and the balance of the two. And of course, modularity, which basically most of us are actually doing. Okay, so these are, teachers, the 5 principles of adaptive design, and this is how we're able to conduct online learning at this point in time with during the pandemic. And again, teachers, wag po nating isipin na this will only be applied for online learning. Teachers, this is adaptive design for learning. Okay, so even if this is you apply this no, in a face-to-face setup, this could actually work as well. Okay, and because it's in general sense, no, although it was designed by Ateneo, okay, for primarily for online learning, no, it actually can be applied, okay, even in a distance learning modality. Okay, maraming salamat Teacher Janelyn for that. No, okay. So let's talk about first adaptability. Okay, so our design for online learning should be adaptable. No, it should be able to adapt, okay, to the different circumstances and situations in your classes. Okay, and also no, adapt, okay, in a way that it becomes more inclusive. Pinag-usapan na rin po natin to teachers, no, during our series on differentiated learning, okay, and other sessions no last August, okay, being inclusive, okay, because if your classes no if your designs, okay, and your delivery is not adaptive enough, you will be whether it's intentional, of course it will always be unintentional, because teachers I believe will never know intentionally exclude other students, okay, but if we do not designs no our classes adaptive enough, no, it will consequently exclude other students. Okay, so let's talk about that first, no, adaptability. Because when we talk about adaptability in delivery, okay, we're actually talking about no when delivery on whether you can deliver it in a synchronous session or in an asynchronous session or in a blended way. Okay, so it must be able to when you design, for example, a lesson, okay, it can the idea there is it should be and it can be something that can be repurposed no in another modality. Okay, so yun yung idea natin ng delivery. And of course, okay, we already talked about that last August as well. When we talk about delivery, is about thinking about different ways to deliver a content. Say, for example, you can deliver it in a video, okay? You can deliver it in a podcast. You can deliver it in a paper, for example, or a reading material, etc. Okay? Aside from that, no, your design should also be your lessons, no, your online lessons should also be adaptable. No, there is also adaptability in design. Okay, what do you mean by adaptability in design? It means that your materials can be packaged in different ways. Okay, say for example, the basic design, okay, for example, the in Athena that we're using is of course online classes. Okay, so we design our classes, no, thinking it will be delivered online. Okay, but then, okay, on top of that basic design is that contextualized layer, okay, that actually now defines no further, okay, how that basic design will be delivered. Okay, maybe for example, we can contextualize the access of our students to internet. Okay, we have to also consider, for example, the access of our students in devices, etc. Okay, that will now shift, okay, or change no how that basic design will be delivered to your students. Okay, second, teachers know is that always have a low bandwidth version. Okay, ano po ibig sabihin natin low bandwidth version? Pinag-usapan din natin last August yun. So I hope teachers you get to visit our August series, no, is that whenever you deliver, for example, contents, okay, online, okay, say for example in a synchronous session, okay, there must be a way for some students who have no access to internet, okay, to access those information. Say for example, if I will give a video, okay, of a for my students to watch in an asynchronous manner, okay, and I have students no who do not have access to stable internet or talagang zero access no or mobile data, then I might have to produce for them no a written or a transcript, okay, of that video, okay, so that those who can watch the video, okay, good for them definitely, but for those who can watch, there's that transcript that can actually they can read without even watching the video but get the same content. Okay? That's the kind of low bandwidth version, okay, that we can produce. Okay, maganda rin for example pag meron kayong mga photos, okay, you are attaching for example photos in your online resources, okay, or mga in your presentations, okay, then you might want to also provide a text, okay, that accompanies that, okay, so that if I can, for example, download the photo or view the photo because I don't have data, I could read the caption and understand just the same what the photo is all about. So I'm not left behind, okay, guessing no what the photo sent by my teacher is, okay, or ano no provided by the teacher. Okay? So yeah, teachers na itatawag ng low bandwidth version. Teachers, kapag kaya natin syempre, ginagawa naman natin to yung mga nagpapadala ng learning packages, okay? Either digitalized kay learning packages or printed learning packages is actually an adaptability in design. So teachers, okay, kayo po na nagpiprint ng modules, kayo po ay merong ano yan, no? Characteristic po yan ng adaptability in design. Okay, since many of our students do not have access to internet connection, of course, nagpo-provide tayo ng learning packets or printed modules for them to be able to access the same learning opportunities just like the others. Okay? Okay, second ano natin no, second concept no or second principle okay of adaptability in design is what we call active and interactive learning. So ibig sabihin teachers no kapag um, ang learning po teachers no or our online classes okay or online learning okay should be about student centered or learner centered siya dapat. Okay? It's all about thinking. Okay? Kaya nga pag pinag-usapan for example, na yung design thinking principle natin is that whenever you design a lesson, okay, you should always start with your students. Okay? With your students in mind. Okay? What will my students do in this lesson? When we are in a video conference, what are my students doing? Okay? When my students are reading this module, what are they doing? Okay? So there, it's always asking that question. Okay? So that whenever you keep on asking that question, teachers know what my students are doing, you are also ensuring okay, that your students are doing something while they're engaging your module or while they are in your video conference in a synchronous session. Kasi kapag nakalimutan mong isipin yung teachers, no, there will be a point wherein your students are not doing anything in your class, okay, and therefore, they're not really engaging fully in your classes. So, napaka-importante nun. Your lesson planning, you're designing an activity, always ask yourself, what are my students doing in this activity? Okay, that should guide you right away. Okay, so teachers, let's not forget, no, whenever we use, for example, technology, okay, that technology, it's not about the technology, but it's about learning. Okay, so wag tayo, sinabi ko po kanina, no, this is the one of the our problems, no, na yung sa tinatawag nating educational amnesia, okay, na minsan nakakalimutan natin that education is still about learning. Okay, your tools, okay, your all of these things, no, that you are using, okay, your approaches, teachers, okay, is all about means, okay, for learning. Okay? So wag natin kakalimutan yun. Okay? So whenever you, for example, introduce a tool for them, you will always have to ask yourself, how will this facilitate learning? Okay? If I'm going to use, for example, katulad namin, pag-uusapan natin ng Bichronous and Synchronous and asynchronous blending, how will Bichronous approach facilitate learning? Ganun pa rin yung question natin. We're not like going out of that. Okay? And teachers, huwag natin kakalimutan, okay, that online learning, no? And it is one of the pitfalls, okay, of online learning. Nakafocus tayo sa online. Okay? That whenever we go online, we always think there's learning. Whenever, for example, we meet our students in a synchronous session, nagkaroon tayong Zoom call or Google Meeting, automatic learning na kagad yun. Teachers, okay, we always have to rethink about that because online learning is still focused on the learning aspect. Yun pa rin ang highlight natin. We just went online, teachers, no? So kung ano yung ginagawa natin before, kaya ano yung purpose, no? And anong direction natin before, prior to the pandemic, we are still doing that. Okay? Online learning is not just merely going online. Okay? The focus should remain on the learning aspect, okay, ng ating online learning, no? Okay? And again, that's teachers, that's also applied, okay? To those, no, to our teachers who are producing printed modules. Okay? So whenever we print modules, it's not just about, okay, I'm going to print these modules so that my students have something to read. Okay? Whenever I print for the modules, for example, or I produce the modules, I will have to constantly ask myself, okay, what these modules are for. Okay? How will this develop, for example, 21st century skills? Okay? How will this develop communication? How will this develop critical thinking skills? How will this develop collaboration? How will this develop um, creativity, no, ng ating mga students? Okay? So wag nating kalimutan yon, okay? Kasi baka lang maybe no we have been caught no by the rush, okay, of the first pandemic school year last year, but as again no that's the reason of this that's one of the points of this discussion is to revisit that, okay? Kaya nga po meron tayong recharge season. We'll have to rethink and revisit those things, okay? So online learning, focus tayo sa learning teachers, okay? Let us let there be more, no, let there be less of us, more of them. That's active learning teachers, no. If you notice that there's always more of you, for example, okay, regardless if it's synchronous or asynchronous, then there's less active learning in there, okay? So try natin. And again, it's all about thinking again. Babalik na naman tayo sa being learner-centered and student-centered. Okay? Less of us, more of them. Okay? It doesn't mean teachers na mawawala tayo sa picture no, ng education. Okay? Take note that you actually, as educators, have an elevated role in educator now. Hindi na lang po tayo nagdi-deliver ng content. Okay? For example, no, kasi before, okay, again, nung time na I was in grade school or high school, most of my teachers are experts in their content and they deliver their content very well, no, at yun talaga yung main role ng mga teachers natin before. Pero ngayon, okay, we are not just someone that delivers content. Okay, we are now designers of instruction. We are now facilitators of the teaching learning process, no, in this, especially in this setup right now. Okay, so again, less of us, more of them. We will now fade into the background, okay, to design the instruction, to guide them, no, as they interact and they engage with content. Okay. The 3 C's of the online learning is also very important when we talk about adaptive design, no, according to the Ateneo principle. Okay. And these 3 C's teachers to define the different approaches or modalities of online learning. Okay. So this is actually, no, and one of the our audience earlier, okay, mentioned it already kanina, okay, is that when you talk about the 3 C's of online learning, okay, you actually have no yung concept ng content, okay, coach, and community. Okay? And teachers, no, itong tatlong concepts na to or tatlong factors na to, okay, are actually what makes online learning very dynamic. Okay? So if you have, for example, a constant access to content, no, or you are able to have your students access content, okay, in a more meaningful way, okay, then definitely, no, your online learning is an elevated one. Okay, but teachers, no, don't forget, okay, it should be the classification right there is meaningful content. It can't be just any content. Okay, it must be that a content that we are actually going to use, no, to make them acquire a new skill or to make sense of the world, etc. Okay, so it's a meaningful content, not just any content. Okay, of course, the next one is called your coach. Okay, the coach teachers. Okay, of course, the presence of the teacher online. Okay, so whenever you meet them, okay, online, no, you're actually serving as a coach, no, for them, no, for them to be able to navigate in an online platform. Okay, give them access to information, etc. Okay, and teachers, no, Ateneo, okay, did not just choose the word coach just because it starts with the letter C, okay, to fit in the idea of 3 C's, no. The coach idea here, teachers, is one of a very deliberate, okay, way, no, to shift, okay, our focus on as educators delivering content, okay, that as a coach you really have to guide your students on how to learn. Okay, yan ang pinakamalaking shift, teachers, no, in our role as educators. We are not just going to teach them, okay, or we're not just going to allow them to learn something. We actually have to teach them how to learn as well, okay, or reflect on their own learning. Okay, and of course the last one, teachers, no, is community. Okay, that this is the community of learners. These are the learners, no, within same class maybe or same group. Okay, and that's actually very important, teachers, no, because, okay, our students cannot learn in isolation. Okay, they cannot like fully grow into the person that we want them to be by just sitting on their desk, no, doing their own work of during the entire year of online classes. Okay, always the community of learners, okay, will play a big part, no, and a huge part, no, in helping a student, no, develop in a full sense, okay, as a person, okay. And teachers, the combination of these three C's, no, actually shows you the different online modalities. So you have the remote teaching, wherein the coach, okay, usually encounters the class in a synchronous session, okay, but some content are being delivered, no, on offline, okay, or in an asynchronous session, okay, so maybe sending readings, okay, or posting discussion boards, okay, etc. Okay. The online learning is the full set of the three C's, okay, wherein you have access to content, to coach, and to the community. This is purely delivered, no, in an online learning setup, okay, wherein these three elements, okay, can actually interact with each other, okay. And of course, you also have your remote study. You know, this is the a little bit of extreme, wherein all materials are actually, you know, sent for self-study. Okay, this is actually what most of our public school teachers now are doing, okay, by sending modules, okay, or learning packets to our students, okay. They actually are doing self-study. Teachers, okay, of course, okay, what we want to do, I mean, we want to have is the full package of online learning, which is, okay, content, coach, and community. So yan pa rin yung gusto natin. Pag nag-online learning tayo, regardless if we're using asynchronous and synchronous, okay, lagi nating titingnan, do my students have access to content? Okay? Am I delivering content? Okay. Second, is there a coach? Okay, as an educator, am I able to guide my students, okay, in accessing information, processing information, etc. Okay. Am I able to promote, no, interaction with my within my classes? Okay. Do I do breakout rooms? Do I assign group projects? Okay. Do my students get to interact with other students within my class? Okay. That's a full online learning setup. Okay. And teachers, no, kaya wag po tayong mag-focus dun sa online, no? Hindi ibig sabihin ng online learning is that everything happens online. Okay? Could actually also happen offline, no? Okay? Using maybe resources sent asynchronously or resources that can be accessed offline. Okay? Mamaya pag-uusapan and we'll clarify that more later on. We're not saying that remote teaching and remote self-study are wrong, teachers. Okay? Of course, these are adaptive measures, okay? To be able to include more students within the learning process. Okay? So, pero sana ang ano pa natin is that we want the idea of those three, no, interacting on the same level. Okay? So teachers, makita niyo, no, from a traditional class, ito kasi yung setup nila before, no. In a traditional class, okay, of course you have the community, the biggest portion of a traditional class is content, okay? And the coach, no, is secondary, but in an adaptive design of learning, no, or adaptive learning, adaptive design of learning, okay? These three are actually equal in amount, no? Okay? So that's what we want, okay? That they're equally engaging each other, all of this content, okay, coach, and the community, okay? Yes, okay, teachers, no, yan ang ating idea, okay, ng 3 Cs, okay? Let's not forget, teachers, no, that the goal of learning, of online learning, is to interact with the content, instructor, and other learners, okay? So napakahalagang matandaan po natin, teachers, yan, okay? So if you are missing one of these factors, no, you'll have to really rethink about the online learning process, okay? And to obtain support during the learning process in order to acquire knowledge, to construct personal meaning, and to grow from the learning experience. Okay, so of course, no, we have gone far already, but there's still far way ahead, teachers, ahead of us, teachers, no, that learning should go beyond just receiving information. Okay? So say for example, ibig sabihin po niyan, teachers, no, for example, okay, if you, for example, give readings to your students, it can't be just the readings, okay? And ask your students, for example, to read a reading, okay? So maybe, for example, when you assign a reading, then you might want to contextualize that reading. Why would your students read that? Are there questions right after? Are there processing questions right after? In your synchronous session, will you actually process that information? Okay. So it's not just, it should not never be, no, just them reading, for example, a material. For example, another one is video. Okay, we assign them a video. It can't just be watching a video. Okay, when you, for example, assign your students to watch a video, make sure that you provide them guide questions, and make sure, for example, you might want to also give them opportunity, for example, in a breakout room to discuss about the video. Okay, let them talk about insights, no, what they got from the video, etc. Okay, kasi hindi lang siya pwedeng binigay mo yung information and that's it. Okay? Because that is not learning. You just simply gave information. Okay? Learning is a more complex process, okay, of making meaning, of making sense of the information. Okay? So yun po yung dapat natin again, no, ma-revisit again. Okay? Okay? And of course, teachers, no, ginagawa naman natin ito ngayon, modularity. Okay? At madami po sa atin, teachers, no, have successfully done modularity. No? Ibig sabihin lang, teachers, ng modularity is creating, no, meaningful chunks, okay, of our lessons. Okay? So instead of, for example, giving a one whole unit, okay, of lessons, we're actually chunking it in smaller pieces, okay, so that it's easier to digest or to be digested, no, by our students. Okay? It's the analogy there is cake. Okay, so for example, you can't give a cake to a person and expect that person to digest the entire cake, no, all together. Okay, that's the reason why we cut the cake. Okay, we cut the cake so that we can that the person or the persons, okay, who's going to consume the information can actually digest it. Okay, maybe that's a simple way of why we're chunking information. Okay, and of course, interim checkpoints. Okay, teachers, no, kapag gumagawa tayo ng mga modules natin, hindi siya pwedeng tuloy-tuloy na wala tayong feedback or checkpoints. Okay? So say for example, if it's a whole module, no, of like for example 5 lessons, okay? It can't be tuloy na tuloy na 5 lessons. After 1 lesson, checkpoint tayo. Or maybe after 2 lessons, let's have a checkpoint. Okay? For example, the checkpoint could be a synchronous session. Let's meet, let's talk about the module. Okay? So ganun siya. Okay? That makes it more cohesive, okay, yung modules natin. Also the students are not completely left alone, no. Yan yung tinatawag nating myth of independent learning. Teachers, hindi ibig sabihin binigyan natin sila ng asynchronous task. That promotes independent learning already. We still have to be there, okay? Again, as a coach, okay? Guide them, see to it that they're actually able to successfully accomplish the task. Teachers, let's not commit, no, the mistake of putting them in the panic zone. Let's revisit the zone of proximal development by Vygotsky. While we want them to go out of their comfort zone, dapat hindi naman sila mapunta dun sa panic zone. Okay? So whenever we want to stretch our students' capabilities, we have to be there to actually guide them, okay, in order for them to stretch themselves outside of their comfort zones. Okay? That's our that makes modules meaningful. Okay? So again, there is that deliberate designs, okay, within your modules that makes it meaningful. Okay? And of course, the last element of the ADL, no, or the adaptive design of learning is that as in Ateneo, and of course also in my school, in Xavier School, is that we believe that more asynchronous and less synchronous. Okay, so there should be more time for students to actually study and to actually engage content, okay, information and learn skills, okay, in their own time and pacing. Okay, so again, we're not choosing, okay? Hindi tayo pumipili, okay? Hindi tayo pipili na, gusto ko synchronous lang. Lahat tayo online tayo, okay? Or iba naman, or lahat tayo asynchronous. Okay? It can't be that way, no? Okay? These two are actually working together, okay? It's just a matter of balancing it to be able to achieve a good results, no, or student outcome from our students, and to support, okay, student learning. Pag-uusapan pa natin mamaya yung balance na yan, okay? Sa synchronous and asynchronous, okay? So let's now teachers, no, talk about Bichronous. Since yun naman talaga ang topic natin para sa araw na ito, no? Okay, what is Bichronous approach and why do we have to talk about this? Okay, and how do we approach, no, Bichronous approach? Okay, So the first one is that we'll have to first, okay, define, okay, synchronous and asynchronous. Alam na po natin to teachers, no? We've gone through an entire year, no? And perhaps synchronous and asynchronous terms, no, are hindi ko pa nakikita, pero maybe that's one of the most mentioned, okay, terms, no, in 2020, if I'm not mistaken, no, by educators, okay? Synchronous and asynchronous. Pero ano nga ba ito, okay? And because understanding these two concepts gives you a better idea how to blend them. Kasi kapag medyo off yung understanding natin at yung ano natin yung understanding of their advantages and disadvantages, then we might have a problem, okay, blending them together. Okay? So let's revisit, teachers. Now, when we talk about synchronous teachers, okay, we're actually talking about, okay, is defined as a course in which all content is delivered online. Okay, students can engage with it from anywhere. However, there are real-time meetings which students have to engage with at the same time. So, ibig sabihin lang, pag synchronous, that regardless kung nasan ka, pero may mga real-time meetings. Okay, like example, we meet every Tuesday from 8 a.m. to 9 a.m. And that's definite. Okay, you either see it or you either attend it or you miss it. That's the call. Okay. That's the idea of synchronous. Kapag sinabi natin synchronous teachers, ibig sabihin the learning happens at the teacher's space. Okay? Ibig sabihin in an actual definite time. Okay? That was set by the teacher. Okay? So this is our learning time. 8 a.m. to 9 a.m. is our learning time. That's synchronous. Okay? Because you are learning together. Okay? As a class. Okay? Now, when we talk about benefits and drawbacks of synchronous, okay, so there are actually quite a few. Okay, so for synchronous teachers, okay, synchronous sessions, ang pinakamaganda about synchronous sessions, there's always a sense of immediacy and spontaneity. Di ba last time, for example, nagpakita ko ng quadrant no dun sa session on low bandwidth session. Okay, synchronous sessions give you that immediate ability to feedback. Okay? Immediate ability to address concerns, immediate ability to actually deliver content. Okay? So hindi siya, for example, iintayin mo na basahin ng student yung reading material for them to be able to engage with the content. Okay? You can actually go there in a synchronous session and engage your students in a learning process. That's the beauty of synchronous session. Okay? Second, okay, they are ideal for personal interactions. Okay? So there's that more personal touch. Okay? Even if teachers know, I don't know about you, but it's also not as personal because you also sometimes you just see thumbnails, okay, or people moving in boxes in your gallery, but that gives you the closest, okay, to personal interactions. No, given our situation right now, you can actually see them in those tiny boxes, okay, and see how they look like. No, unlike for example in asynchronous, there's really totally no interaction right there. Okay. They can produce a greater sense of community, okay, because we are studying as a class. Okay, for example, okay, you actually see other learners in the room. Okay, you can actually chat with them. When there's breakout room, there's actually interaction. Okay, but the problem with synchronous teachers is that there might be problems with scheduling. Okay, sometimes, for example, lalo na ngayon, okay, some students might have no connection. Okay, or sometimes some students are bothered by family concerns, okay? So they can't attend at that very specific time. Okay? So for example, 8 to 9 a.m. Okay? Synchronous sessions may be challenging for people with families and busy schedule. Okay? So what if, for example, both parents are working? So problematic na kagad yun. Okay? So that's also one of the things that you also have to consider. For example, even those who are printing modules, okay, you also have to consider that. Okay? How would parents who are working during the day, okay, would be able to assist their kids? Okay? Or, okay, do I design my modules enough that so that there should be less, okay, parents intervention so that my students can independently actually acquire or accomplish the module? Okay? They are biased, okay, to the more extroverted and articulated learners. Okay? Let's admit it, teachers, no, hindi po lahat ng ating mga students are confident in speaking or confident in actually being part of a large group. Okay, even it's in just in a Zoom call or in a Google Meet. Okay, plus, okay, not everyone is actually articulate. Everyone's articulate, by the way. I personally believe that. Okay, but we are articulate in different ways. Okay, Some people can express better in words. Okay? Some people can express themselves better in visual way. Okay? Some people can express themselves in other forms. Okay? So we are articulate differently. Okay? But when you go to Zoom, for example, Zoom call or Google Meeting, okay, you are actually sometimes in most cases, no, we are boxing our students to be able to articulate, okay, their ideas in an oral form, and maybe for some that's not just possible or not very difficult for some. Okay, and maybe the most important drawback of a synchronous session is that there's a limited time for reflection. Teachers, kapag meron tayong mga mga complex ideas, okay, or complex lessons, okay, it's so hard to ask our students or expect our students that they get that right away sa synchronous session natin. Okay, so for example, nagturo ka ng concept, or for example, sa mga math teachers natin, nagturo tayo ng formula, it can't be expected na right at that moment, no, after 60 minutes okay, of synchronous session, alam na kagad ni student yung lesson na yun. Okay? Or for some concepts no, that you have to reflect on, okay, wala ka talagang time for reflection. Okay? It seems like a rush. Okay? So mamaya pag-usapan natin, kailan pa talaga dapat ginagamit si synchronous session, no? Given these drawbacks and benefits. Okay? Okay, next is what are the best practices in synchronous sessions? No? Ano naman yung mga best practices natin okay, na ginagawa natin no, as teachers? Okay? So the first one is set direction. Okay, so when we are doing synchronous session, teachers, no, be deliberate. Hindi siya pwedeng, okay, na-miss ko yung mga students ko, magsi-synchronous sessions kami ngayon. Okay? It can't be just that. Okay, so in your learning plan, teachers, no, in your schedule, dapat deliberate na pinapakita mo or dapat naka-schedule talaga na may synchronous session tayo dito. It's because something important will be done there. Something very relevant, no, or that will affect the learning process. Okay? So it can't be just because naka-schedule. Okay? So kailangan deliberate tayo when we are scheduling a synchronous session. Especially teachers, no, we will ask our students to go online. We will ask our students to spend money, for example, for mobile data. It must be something really meaningful, worthwhile, ng time nating lahat. Okay? Hindi lang actually yung students, so tayo rin. Okay? Dapat clear yung directions natin. Okay? Second, focus on active learning. Okay? Let your students do something during your synchronous sessions. Hindi lang sila pwedeng nakikinig lang. Okay? So there's actually should be ways to engage your students okay, in different ways. Okay? Wherein your students are interacting and doing. Okay? Yun yung idea natin, no? Your students should be doing something in your class. Okay? So maybe for example, after a 10-minute input or 15 minutes of discussion, okay, go give them like example a survey, okay? Or you can actually also give them some activities to further digest the concept, okay? Or you can actually put them in the breakout room and talk about the topic or the concepts discussed, okay, etc. Or maybe, for example, if it's a skill, okay, then practice the skill, okay? Give them exercises during your synchronous sessions, okay? Which you can actually give feedback to right away. Okay? At marami na po tayong mga tools, no, na pwedeng gamitin diyan. Nung Thursday lang pinag-usapan namin dito sa Kaagapan Teacher Report about class point, okay? And making your presentations more interactive, okay? Okay, next is be flexible. Teachers, you can't expect everything to happen according to plan. Alam naman natin yan as teachers. That's why, di ba? When even before the pandemic, lagi tayo may tinatawag na plan A and plan B. Okay? Pag hindi to gumana, magpa-plan B ako. Okay? Same lang po yan, teachers, with online classes. Okay? You always have to have a plan B. Okay? And of course, no, accept the flow of the moment. Say, for example, during your synchronous session, instead of delivering your lesson, you had to answer many questions of your students about the readings that you gave them or the videos that you asked them to watch. Okay, teachers, no, take that opportunity. Okay, di ba? Baka lang nakalimutan natin yung tinatawag nating learning opportunities or teaching moments natin okay, sa ating mga students. Those are teaching moments. Okay, so take that time. Okay, because actually by doing so, no, you're actually able to attend to the actual needs of your students. Okay, Yes, maybe magkakaroon tayo ng delay sa ating learning plans or unit plans, okay? But you were able to engage your students in a more meaningful discussion, okay? So be flexible, okay, during your synchronous sessions. Wag na lalo na for example pag nawalan ng signal or nagkakaroon ng deviation sa flow ng lesson mo, accept it, okay? And try to maximize that given situation or circumstances, okay? And of course, be the host, okay, teachers, no? Alam ko na po, siyempre, kailangan nating maging host, sa sarili nating mga synchronous sessions, okay? Facilitate discussions. Tell them when they can ask questions, okay? Give them a moment to ask questions, okay? Moderate, for example, exchange of ideas in the chat, okay? Call their attention, for example, kapag meron sila mga good insights from the chat, okay? Etc. Okay? So, be that dynamic host that facilitates exchanges of ideas, and engagement in the class, okay? I know we're not all that hindi naman natin kailangan maging sobrang energetic every time para maging host level. Pero kailangan lang natin that we are clear, and we're able to actually facilitate the flow of the session properly. Okay? Para we can maximize the time. Keep it short, teachers. Okay? For example, for college level, our synchronous sessions would usually last between an hour or 1 hour and a half, okay, for university level. For high school students, 40 minutes and 50 minutes should be our maximum, teachers, okay. For younger students, teachers, okay, it should be even less, 15 minutes to 20 minutes of synchronous session should be enough. Now, Sir Franco, what if, for example, I want a longer session? What should I do? Teachers, okay lang yon, okay? But you'll have to chunk them. So say, for example, you're planning to do a whole 60 minutes synchronous session for your maybe for your grade 1, grade 2 students or grade 4, grade 5 students. Make sure to chunk it. 1 hour, you can chunk it into 3. 20 minutes first, okay, and then activity, 20 minutes, some activities, etc., and so on and so forth, okay? So chunk your sessions, your synchronous sessions, if longer sessions cannot be avoided. Do not ever do a full 90 minutes or 120 minutes to a kinder student. You cannot expect attention, okay? That attention span from our students, okay? They will somehow lose interest, okay, and will disengage from your classes. Okay? We don't want that. We don't want disengaged students, okay? So keep it short or keep it in chunks, okay? That's our idea, okay? Okay, let's now go to asynchronous, okay? So when we talk about asynchronous, basically we're talking about online learning defined in the literature as a course where there's no online real-time meetings, okay? So you don't actually meet online, no, okay? Instead, okay, materials, okay, and content are delivered online, okay, but can be accessed by the students, okay, on their own pacing and their own schedule. Yan po ang ating asynchronous. Again, alam na natin po yan, okay? So say for example, ng mga example niyan is nagbigay ka ng video, okay, that your students need to watch, okay, for your lesson. That's an asynchronous, okay? You assign them some readings, okay? That's an asynchronous, okay? You give them a worksheet to be submitted next meeting. That's asynchronous, okay? Those are some asynchronous activities, okay? Now, some benefits and drawbacks of asynchronous. So when you talk about benefits, for example, we're talking about flexibility. Very flexible ang asynchronous, no? It can actually be, in terms of, for example, in Medium, okay? Content, no, can be delivered in multiple ways, okay? For example, same content can be delivered in a website, can be delivered in a video, can be delivered in a text, okay? Podcast as well, it's audio, okay? You can actually do that, okay? And flexible in a way that your students can access them in their own time. I can't access it this morning, I'll access it in the afternoon. I have something to do in the afternoon, I can access it in the morning. That's very flexible. It allows your students, okay, to actually able to access the information or the content, okay, without the burden of having to attend, no, a very definite time. Okay? And that takes now into consideration the context of your students. Okay? Since your students might be, for example, have COVID-19, etc., na, or are bothered with some issues, okay, then they can actually prioritize, for example, that to access information or content later on. Okay? practicality, okay? In terms of use, no, okay, very practical din ang asynchronous, okay, because of the multitude ways that we can actually present content, okay? And it will also be practical as well for the teachers, okay, because they don't need to set a particular time, okay? They don't need to consume, for example, bandwidth, okay, etc. No, okay, and also for the students, okay, because they can freely schedule, okay, their own pace during an asynchronous session. Affordability, teachers, okay, totoo lang, mas ano pa rin siya, no? Mas affordable pa rin siya for our students, regardless if we are in the pandemic or not in the pandemic later on, okay? Affordability is because you're not going to ask them in a video conference, therefore they don't need to consume that much bandwidth or mobile data. Good if they have unlimited internet, but if none, they'll have to buy mobile data. That's they will have to spend money on. Okay, even for example, post pandemic, okay, having asynchronous, okay, will not require students to travel, okay, and therefore more affordable, okay. Maybe of course, no, it will ask them to invest in a device, okay, but those devices can actually be used for a long term, okay. Now teachers, that's actually, no, kaya ko sinasabi rin kanina na even post pandemic kasi pwede rin siyang mangyari, okay. Say for example, na the case of Singapore, okay, prior to the pandemic, actually Singapore had already have that experiment, okay. They already have a way, or they already have trained their teachers, no, to teach 1 day per week on online, okay. So when they entered into the pandemic, no, last year and this year, they had not much problem because their teachers, okay, are fully equipped and they actually know how to navigate in online learning. And teachers, that's also something that we can look forward to in the future. That we're in, we might be teaching in a blended way, no, in a Bichronous way, where we meet our students in the classroom maybe 3 days, 4 days in a week, and then we meet them 2 days or 1 day in as an asynchronous or online setup. That's a possibility. Okay? But of course, ang drawbacks ng asynchronous teachers, no, is that isolation. Okay, even as teachers, no, we also experience that. It's so hard, okay, mentally and emotionally to sustain ourselves, okay, in an online distance learning setup. Okay, and that's true for all, not only for our students, okay, for our teachers as well. Okay, being isolated, being for example in a room or in a space in your house, no, talking to facing your computer, has some mental and emotional impact, no, to all of us, okay. Require self-discipline. Pag walang discipline sa student, patay, okay, talagang mahihirapan na, okay. So it really have it boils down, no, to the collaboration of the parents and the teachers, okay, because it can't be just assumed that all students, okay, are expected to be self-disciplined on the same level, okay. You will always have students that does not do anything, does not submit anything, or does not like engage in anything that you do. Okay, that's one of the challenges, no, of asynchronous. Pag nag-assign ka ng module, for example, yung mga teachers po natin na nag-print ng mga modules, sometimes, no, I have heard stories, for example, that modules were left unanswered or were not done. Okay, again, that definitely cost them, no, learning and or learning opportunity to learn, okay, in your class, okay. Lack of instant feedback, okay. It's so hard to give feedback in an asynchronous, hindi siya ganun kadali, okay, unless you're using tools, okay, that actually helps you, say for example Google Form that gives immediate feedback, okay. But otherwise, okay, feedback in an asynchronous session, okay, is not as immediate, okay. So limited contact with instructor as well, okay. You can't be there, no, you can't insert yourself in the modules, okay, and have yourself, no, engage or interact with your students, okay. So yan ang mga challenges, no, at drawbacks ng asynchronous. Puntahan naman natin, teachers, yung best practices in asynchronous sessions, no, how to best do asynchronous sessions, okay. So the first one is create a dynamic agenda. Okay, so it can be done by simply listing down. Okay, so always try to imagine, no, when you assign, okay, your asynchronous session. Okay, so budget your time properly. Okay, so still think about a particular period of the day. It can't be that you're assuming that the students, okay, will do everything within a day. Okay? So kailangan, for example, okay, you still put a time on your agenda, no, asynchronously. So for example, you have 4 activities, okay, that can be done in an hour. Okay? So it's really up to the student if he will do it in an hour, pero cumulatively, no, the activities can be done in hours. So for example, activity number 1 is 20 minutes. Activity number 2 can be done in 30 minutes. Activity number 3 can be done in 20 minutes, and so on and so forth. And then put all activities and make sure that your activities are not the same. Like example, it can't be watch a video, watch a video, watch a video, watch a video. Okay, that's not going to engage your students, no, asynchronously. So for example, you can do watch a video, answer these questions about the video. Okay, and then for example, share your knowledge, okay, about the video in maybe a share board. Okay, and then create something. Okay, say for example, can you create an image, no, or a photo or a drawing that reflects the ideas of the video? So teachers, no, nakita nyo, in all of those things, okay, you were able to engage your students, okay, in different ways, okay, by simply doing different things, no, by creating dynamics within your lessons, variations and differentiation in your approaches. Okay, that's for creating dynamic. Okay, second, make it interactive. Okay, always think about these two things. Okay, provide a thinking time. Hindi siya pwedeng dire-diretso. Okay, so for example, you ask them to read an article. Okay, students, okay, read this article. Okay, and after that, teachers, no, it can't be, for example, submit a reflection paper on this one. It can't be that like that, no. So for example, if you ask them to read an article, the next question should be, or should the next section should be a processing. Okay, it's either contact a classmate, okay, and talk about the article, okay, or it could be, for example, I don't know, interview, okay, someone in your household, okay, about the topic discussed in the article, or it could be a set of prompts or questions that your students can answer to be able to see if they actually understood the article. Okay? That's the idea, okay? And of course, doing time. Lagi mong isipin anong ginagawa ng student ko. For example, reading article, definitely reading 'yan, okay? After that, anong ginagawa niya? Okay? After that particular reading activity, okay? So always provide your students, no, a doing time, engaging with the content. Pag for example, nag-introduce ka ng concept dun sa asynchronous mo, make sure that your students actually use it. Say for example, okay, ang lesson ko is on World War II, okay? At ang concept na pinag-aaralan namin is conflict, okay? So maybe for example, if I ask my students to watch a video about World War II, and then I ask them about reflection or questions about that video, I may ask, for example, pwede na akong gumamit ng Edpuzzle kagad, no? Para may annotations na kagad. Pero sa dulo, what I'm going to ask them, for example, is, can you identify modern day conflict? Okay, so in that way, by using the understanding of conflict in World War II and then apply it in the modern world, okay, our students get to process that idea of conflict, no, in varying degrees and ways. At mas napapalalim natin yung pagkatuto ng ating mga estudyante. Okay? So again, interactive, no? Our students must be doing something. Okay? It can't be just reading every time. Okay? Okay, or watching a video, okay? Or of course also recommend pacing teachers, no? Okay? Na-mention ko po na po yan kanina, no? Okay? Kapag po gumagawa kayo ng mga modules, for example, sa mga nagpi-print po ng modules natin, okay? I always recommend that you have a recommended pacing. Okay? So for example, you produce a module, okay? In that module, dapat meron kang, for example, recommended time of doing this activity. So kung nyari sa module mo, meron kang watch this video, okay? Or answer, example, reading this article, okay? So that must be, for example, this activity can be done in 20 minutes. So your students have that idea as well. 20 minutes pala yung kailangan kong spend dito, or what I can spend in this one, so I could budget my time. Okay? Because if without providing pacing, no, or recommended pacing for that particular activity, your students can easily get lost in procrastination, in doing it some other time, in not developing that self-discipline within them. Okay? So tulungan po natin sila. Okay? And of course, teachers, no, have clear deliverables. Okay? Dapat clear po yan, teachers, no, sa mga modules natin. Be it an online module or printed module. Dapat clear kagad nakalagay doon, o deliverable for today, you have an exit pass. For example, ito po yung ginagawa namin sa school ko, no? Okay? So we put the activities for the asynchronous, okay? Or for all the things that we're going to do for the day, and then we give them what should be submitted within the day. Say for example, dito isa lang yung sa-submit nila, only a discussion board for the exit pass. Okay? Clear kagad. Alam na kagad ni student, ito yung deliverable ko. Hindi na siya mahihirapan, hanapin, ano nga ba yung sasubmit ko? Or meron nga bang isasubmit? Okay? So that now gives your students a clear idea or a clear goal and objective what to do in your asynchronous activity. Clear deliverables. Ilista nyo po. Okay? Huwag namang sobrang dami teachers, no? Lagi po nating alalahanin teachers that your students are also working with other subjects. On other subjects. So, given on the day, for example, meron pa yung mga 3 to 4 other subjects or 3 to 4 modules na ginagawa. Okay? So, be considerate, okay? But, be very clear ano yung mga 4 submissions nyo. Okay? And of course, teachers provide midway feedback, especially for long modules, okay, or yung mga printed modules natin, okay. I really admire our teachers who are doing home visitation, okay, because that's also a form of giving feedback, okay. Although alam ko teachers napakahirap po, okay, pero I thank you so much, okay, for doing that because that actually helping our students. Kasi imagine na lang teachers kung hindi po yung mga teachers natin gumagawa ng home visitation tapos pinadala mo lang yung module, okay? Just like that, no? At wala kang feedback midway. Baka whole module hindi pala ginawa ng student or whole module mali na pala yung ginagawa ng students. Wala tayong way to correct them midway. Your midway feedback allows some correction, allows setting directions, okay, or reinforcing things with your students, okay. So napakahalaga po niyan. Again, applies regardless if you're online or online modules, okay, or printed modules, okay. Now, teachers, eto na ngayon yung problema sa atin, pagdating sa synchronous and asynchronous, okay. We have a tendency to treat them separately. Okay? Na, okay, itong lesson ko for this lesson, synchronous natin to. Okay? Itong lesson ko na to, asynchronous ko to. Okay? And that now is the problem. Okay? When we talk about asynchronous and synchronous. Okay? In itself, teachers, okay, both synchronous and asynchronous have actually their own advantages and disadvantages. Okay? But they're actually both good approaches. Okay? But when it comes to online learning, it can't be treated that they are separated. Instead, okay, they have to actually be treated in a way that they overlap. Okay? That they complement each other. That they help each other. Kasi marami sa mga drawbacks ng synchronous na sasagot ng asynchronous. Sorry mo, asynchronous pala to, okay? Not synchronous, okay? So the red one is asynchronous, okay? And on the other hand, teachers, may mga drawbacks si asynchronous na sinasagot ng synchronous. So teachers, yan po yung tinatawag nating blending. That's why we're talking about blending. But because what we want to do here is to use them together in such a way that they complement each other, not that they are isolated or compartmentalized from each other. We want to combine these two approaches because essentially, teachers, synchronous and asynchronous, okay, are actually complementary approaches to online learning. Kung pag tingnan nyo teachers tong figure na to, okay, asynchronous learning is actually used more on cognitive e-learning where we acquire content, when we explore content, okay? Pero hindi lang siya pwedeng asynchronous kasi hindi ka lang pwedeng puro content, okay? Meron ka rin tinatawag na personal participation or personal dimensions of e-learning, wherein, for example, we interact with the teacher, we interact with other students, at yun naman ang nakukuha natin sa ating synchronous sessions. Okay? So, these are two polar opposite approaches. Okay? But if you just meet them midway and try to blend it together, you're actually going to get both worlds. You're going to get cognitive participation, you're going to get personal participation, all together in one learning approach. Okay? At yan, teachers, yung ginagawa natin at gusto natin gawin, okay, sa ating Bichronous, okay, approach, teachers, okay? And that's precisely why this session was made, okay? To make you realize how important it is, okay, to deliberately blend synchronous and asynchronous, okay? So teachers, pag-usapan natin ngayon yan, how exactly do we do this, okay? How do we blend, okay, properly our synchronous and asynchronous sessions, and maybe talk about some activities, no, that we can do for synchronous and we can do for asynchronous as well. Okay, so let's start off with Bichronous approach. Now, what is this Bichronous approach? Basically, teachers, Bichronous approach is a blending of both synchronous and asynchronous. Teachers, please focus on the word blending. Okay, so it's not just using. Okay, you can be using synchronous and asynchronous, but you're not actually doing Bichronous. Okay, so when we talk about Bichronous, the keyword there is blending. And in that sense, teachers know when we say blending is that you are both using the approaches so that they complement each other. Okay. So that your lessons are actually can be will be delivered no online, but could also still be accessed no anywhere from the world and anytime by your students asynchronously. Okay. So yan po ang tinatawag nating Bichronous. Okay. So it's the overlapping of the two or the intersection of the two, okay? Of the synchronous and asynchronous, okay? Now, teachers, some benefits no of Bichronous approach, okay, is that number one, learning at their own pace. Okay, so you still get that idea of learning at their own pace. You are not rushing your students. Your students are learning at the moment they are ready to learn. Okay, and they are prepared to learn. Okay, so you get that using Bichronous, no? Okay, without, and again, kapag pumili kasi, for example, okay, kapag naka-synchronous ka, they're not actually learning in their own pace. Okay? But having a Bichronous, okay, kasi naka-combine yung asynchronous mo tsaka synchronous, you get that as well. Okay? Second, okay, is that you also get immediate feedback and interaction. Diba? Kanina, you can only get this during asynchronous, but you can actually get get this one no as often as needed, okay, in a asynchronous session. Okay? So you also get an immediate feedback and interaction. Okay? Again, teachers, no, wala tayong kakalimutan that learning, education is still a social process. Okay? Malaking factor pa rin po no yung pagkatuto ng mga estudyante in a context of in the social context. Okay? For especially in the Philippines. Okay? And of course, you also get no communicating in an enhanced audiovisual and learning environment. Okay? Since gumagamit tayo ng parehong approaches, no, we still get, while our students get to learn in their own pace, they still get that opportunity to learn in an audio-visual online learning environment where they can actually get to see the contents. Okay? Get it to be explained by the teacher. Okay? Exchange ideas with the classmates, exchange ideas with the teachers, etc. Okay. So all of these are the advantages no of your Bichronous approach. Okay. Now, let's look at when and why. Okay? Kailan ba talaga dapat ginagamit no ang ating synchronous and asynchronous so that we can blend it together. Okay. So teachers, okay, when do we use asynchronous? Okay. So first one is that it's all about use asynchronous when your students need to reflect on complex issues or complex terms. Okay? Again, for example, you introduce the concept in asynchronous, allow them to reflect on it or process it in an asynchronous session. Yan po yung sinasabi natin connection kanina. Okay? Na, di pwede, for example, na nag-deliver ka ng complex concept, no? At hindi mo na binigyan yung students mo ng time to reflect on it in an asynchronous session. Okay? So, pero, of course, no, mas recommended pa rin na kapag complex yung concept or issue, that we deliver it in an asynchronous learning, e-learning, so that their students have more time to grasp it, okay, to actually consume it or to actually look for it or study it. Okay? Hindi sila mabibigla or ma-overwhelmed. Okay? For synchronous, okay, we can deliver less complex issues that we can actually readily explain at mas digestible siya during our synchronous session. Bakit natin ito ginagawa? Kasi minsan, di ba, baligtad. Minsan yung mga complex issues, kasi gusto natin siyang ipaliwanag, dinideliver natin siya sa synchronous session. Kaya lang, in most cases, because it's too complex, hindi rin ma-digest ng students natin. So, mas maganda pa rin, no, kapag less complex or yung issue or concept, okay? sa synchronous session natin siya ilagay. Okay? And the more complex issues, you can introduce in synchronous but process in asynchronous. So kita nyo teachers, may connection na tayo. Okay? Second, when synchronous meetings cannot be scheduled because of work, family, and other commitments. Okay, so that's also another option. No, so always get to know your the context of your students. Okay, so that you can use asynchronous in order to complement the learning process. Okay, without meeting them in a video conference. Okay. So you're going to repurpose. Yan po yung sinasabi ko kanya teachers no na adaptive dapat yung design ng lessons mo. So that even if for example you design a lesson no to be delivered no in a synchronous session, you can actually repurpose it so that it can be given or accessed by your students asynchronously. Adaptive. Okay? Hindi mo kailangan gumawa ng bagong lesson. Okay? For synchronous e-learning, getting acquainted, for example, okay? Yung mga introductions, okay? Orientations, okay? Gawin nyo po yan sa synchronous session. Say, for example, teachers, bakit natin kailangan itong gawin? Example, meron kang project. Okay? Hindi pwede na ibigay mo lang yan kagad sa asynchronous. Like example, okay class, we have a project, I assigned it in our Google Classroom. It can't be like that. Kailangan, for example, for your project, i-meet mo muna yung students mo so that you can explain to them the project, okay, the context of the project, how they're actually going to do the project, and the rest are asynchronous. See how synchronous session are working hand in hand with asynchronous. Okay? Planning of tasks, teachers, no? Pwede nyo rin tulungan, for example, yung mga students nyo na mag-plan ng mga tasks nila or mag-scaffold ng kanilang mga tasks, okay? For a project, for example, or assessments that you are asking them to do. Okay? Kasi those things, no, pwede sila mag-consult, pwede ka magbigay ng immediate feedback, etc. Okay? Pwede ka mag-coaching during the time. Okay? Again, you can only do that during synchronous session. Okay? Why? Okay? We do asynchronous because students have more time to reflect because the sender does not expect an immediate answer. So, kasi sometimes, no, ang classic example of the teachers is that, di ba sometimes meron tayong mga instances that our students, okay, are fighting in the classroom, for example, before, okay, and we're asking them to say sorry to each other. Actually, mali yun eh. Okay? Kasi pag pinagsabi mo sila kagad, for example, ng sorry to each other, they're actually not able to reflect on what exactly is wrong. What wrong did I did? Did I do pala, sorry, did I do? Okay? Yan po yung, ganyan yung concept ng teachers, no? Kapag nag-i-introduce po tayo ng mga complex issues and concepts, okay, we cannot expect our students to right away know it and master it. So, pwede mong i-introduce sa synchronous, then master it over an asynchronous session. Okay? Bakit naman natin gagawin ng synchronous? Because students become more committed and motivated because a quick response is expected. Okay? Now, because our students naman, okay, for lessons or activities that you can engage your students for an immediate a quick response, okay, that can actually motivate your students, no, to learn more. For example, magsisynchronous kayo so that you can unpack, for example, certain concepts in a reading material that you assign them. You can do that. Okay. And of course, how? So use asynchronous means such an email, discussion boards, and blogs. Okay. For synchronous e-learning, you can use video conferencing, instant messaging, and chat. Teachers, I already discussed this last time, no? Hindi kailangan na ang synchronous ay laging naka-video conference. Okay? Marami pong nag-synchronous, for example, naka-chat sila. Okay? So they will just go live in the chat, okay? Type present, okay? Participate in activities, etc. That's synchronous learning, okay? You're all learning at the same time, okay? In a specific period in time, okay? You can also do, for example, teachers, documents, okay? You can ask them, for example, you can do a class presentation, or you can do, for example, editing of a document, okay? In Google Docs kasi makikita mo lahat ng mga participants mo sa list, okay? When you are online in a document, for example. That's also synchronous, okay? Hindi kailangan naka-video conference ka, okay? Among other things, no? Okay, to complement basically video conferencing calls kung hindi kaya talaga pero gusto mong mag-synchronous learning, okay? Okay, let's now look at some best practices of Bichronous approach. Ano naman yung mga pwede nating mga dapat natin gawin or pwede natin gawin, okay, to best capture the idea of Bichronous approach. Okay? The first one, teachers, is this one is I'm sharing for personal experience, teachers. No, in order for me to make sure that my synchronous sessions and my asynchronous sessions are blending to each other and are actually supplementing and complementing each other, I use a matrix. Nililista ko po talaga lahat ng lessons ko, ano yung modality ko, at paano ito i-deliver so that I know that as I progress into my lessons, okay, I'm actually using both synchronous and asynchronous, no, in a more blended way. Okay, so this is an example, teachers, no, of my this is what I use in natin, for example. Okay, so for example, gumagawa na po ako ng matrix ko. Okay, kunyari guide ko to, teachers, no, guide ko tsaka guide ng mga students ko. Of course, the more elaborate planning is outside of this matrix, no. Okay, so for example, nilalagay ko na dyan yung mga date, okay, kailan ko sila i-meet, okay, for asynchronous or synchronous, okay. Tapos anong platform, ano yung gagawin namin, okay, etc. Okay, and then, okay, following that, okay, I know, for example, kapag magbibigay naman ako ng synchronous activities for that date, okay, nilalagay ko na rin kagad dun yung ano yung um, material. Say, for example, teachers, na makita nyo dito that in my asynchronous, nag-assign ako ng video ng 19th century Philippines. Okay? Tapos nagpalagay ako ng discussion board, okay, so that I can process, no, that video lesson. Okay? Ngayon, bakit ko binigay yun? Kasi gagamitin ko itong materials na to use that, no, in my synchronous session on September 30. Okay? Yan po, teachers, no. Again, okay, lahat naman talaga tayo nagba-Bichronous approach na. Ang importante lang dito ngayong i-visit, no, or revisit is that gaano ka-blended yung synchronous mo tsaka asynchronous mo. Are they actually working with each other or totally naka-compartmentalize siya? Because we don't want it to be compartmentalized. We want them to be working with each other and for each other. Yan po yung tinatawag nating blended, no, or blending nitong approach nito. And ghost teachers, no, pati mga deadlines, nilagay ko na rin po dito, etc. So yan, teachers, no, ang aking example, no, makes it a lot easier, okay, to make sure to plan your synchronous sessions, your asynchronous, ano yung mga ibibigay mo, and if those things are or your synchronous and asynchronous are working together. Okay, that's your designing a matrix. Okay. Second, teachers, in a Bichronous approach, okay, always make sure that you share your resources. Okay, napaka-importante po niyan, no? Okay? So for example, even if nag-synchronous ka, okay, dapat yung mga resources na yung teachers, no, are accessible offline or in an asynchronous manner. Okay, so for example, gumamit ka ng presentation, you might want to give them a PDF of that. Okay? For example, nag-class kayo, okay, make sure naka-record, share the recording to them. Okay? You have a references that you use in your synchronous session, i-share mo rin sa kanila yun. Anong ibig sabihin ng teacher? So that when you engage them in an asynchronous, they can actually deepen their understanding of your lesson. Okay? They can engage further, no, from your synchronous session going to your asynchronous session. Okay? That's for sharing resources. Plus, teachers, no, malaking tulong to sa mga absent na students na nagkaroon ng COVID problems, etc. Okay? For our classes, no? Okay? For our students, okay? Wala pong na-exclude at walang nawawala. Okay? Second, be deliberate in making connections. Talagang dapat, teachers, pinag-iisipan natin siya. Okay? For example, nag-synchronous ka. Yung next session mo is asynchronous. Kailangan mo talagang isipin, how will my asynchronous connect to my synchronous? Or in such a way, pwede mo na isipin, magsisynchronous ako ngayon, I will now anticipate ano nga ba yung asynchronous session ko so that I can already give instruction, provide clarifications before they get into that asynchronous. So you are also always constantly thinking, no? Constantly building those connections from asynchronous to synchronous, from synchronous to asynchronous, okay? So that you are making sure that your learning process is not like hindi putol-putol, okay? That it flows from one session to another regardless if it's activity. Teacher May, hindi po to ang aming learning lesson plan, no. Ang lesson plan po namin mas complex and complicated, no. I just use, no, well, okay, at least this is for my Ateneo class, okay? is that itong matrix features na it guides me, okay? Para naka-list ko lahat ng lessons ko as well as yung flow ng aking modalities and approaches, okay? That shifts from asynchronous to synchronous, okay? Every week, okay? Kasi yun po yung setup namin no sa ano. And of course, teachers no, rin tayo, mag-vertical stacking of approaches din tayo. Huwag tayong laging naka-linear lang na tuloy-tuloy. For example, okay, mag-ano ako, synchronous, asynchronous, synchronous, asynchronous. Okay? Pwede rin siya, teachers, vertical stacking. Say for example, nag-asynchronous activity ka na for that lesson, pero for example, very complex kasi yung concepts doon, then you might want, okay, to follow it up with a synchronous activity wherein you meet together to process or unpack the lesson. Or pwede rin siyang baligtad. Bago ka pa magpa-asynchronous, okay, mag-ano ka muna, mag-synchronous ka muna to introduce the concepts and give clarifications before your students, okay, engage into an asynchronous. Hindi siya kailangan na lesson 1 asynchronous, lesson 2 synchronous, lesson 3 async. Hindi naman kailangan ganun. Pwedeng for example, lesson 1, class na, mag-ano tayo dito, both synchronous and asynchronous. Lesson 2, synchronous lang tayo. Lesson 3, pwede tayong medyo complex yung ideas dito, synchronous at saka asynchronous din tayo. Okay? So vertical stacking po, no? Okay, so teachers, to yan ang ating vertical stacking of approaches. Hindi siya kailangan linear lang. Pwede rin siyang vertical stacking of approaches. Okay? Teachers, okay? Questions, okay? Concerns, okay? We're just in time, no? Okay? So teachers, ito, gagawin natin ngayon is we'll enter into an open forum, and actually I'm going to invite my co-administrator, no, okay, to also join me, okay, and we'll be talking more on like specific lessons or specific activities, okay, that are best done in a synchronous or asynchronous, okay, and we will also address some of your questions in the chat. Ang dami ko po nakita ang haba ng mga reflections saka insights kay sa sa chat natin, okay? Ang sabi ko that's the beauty of our community, no. Hindi lang po isa lang ang nagtuturo. Ang webinar po natin lagi ay always composed of 200 plus speakers every time. At yan ang kinakatuwa ko. Let's welcome into our stream, teachers, because that ends now, teachers, my sharing, and maraming salamat for listening, alam ko medyo madaldal. Teachers, hindi po ito dapat yung approach natin kasi this is fully synchronous, pero hopefully I was able to cover as much grounds, and open up discussions and revisiting synchronous and asynchronous approaches. Let's welcome into our stream para po samahan akong i-discuss ang inyong mga questions and insights, So yan. Teachers, yes, Sir Teacher Pao, welcome, and maraming salamat for joining us in this stream.
Good afternoon, Sir Franco. Sige, pwede ka uminom ng tubig kasi alam ko sobrang dami mong na-share, no? And I'm sure our teachers, they're very engaged actually in the chat and are probably reflecting already what are the things that they've been doing, if they're doing it right, or there are things that they still want to improve on. So this is actually new to me. I mean, I'm not really familiar that there's that Bichronous. No, I think there's one question. What's the difference between hybrid and Bichronous, Sir Franco?
Actually, wala naman talaga, no? Concept-wise, yes, I mentioned kanina, Teacher Pao, essentially, wala talaga siyang difference, si ano lang talaga, si Bichronous was etymologically ay kinuha from the word synchronous at asynchronous, kaya siya tinawag na Bichronous, no? I think ang pinaka-importanting concept dun sa Bichronous is yung time, of time of learning, so when we talk about, for example, Bichronous, you have a combination of time of learning with others, and time of learning by yourself, or self-paced learning na tinatawag natin, kasi si hybrid could actually be more on approaches, activities and strategies, so pag sinabi kasi natin, for example, hybrid, it could be beyond just the concept of self-learning and self-paced, it could be a hybrid because you're delivering lessons in multiple modalities, etc. So si Bichronous, mas nakafocus siya dun sa concept ng learning with others, at saka self-paced learning.
Okay, and I think Ma'am Manolita White has that
The same,
follow-up
same lang yan.
question.
Yes.
What's the difference between blended and Bichronous learning this time? I think it's the focus,
Parang
no?
yes, Teacher Pao, siguro puwede mong i-consider that, ano 'no, when we talk about, blended learning 'no, is that puwede siyang mas gamitin na umbrella term, okay, compared to the Bichronous 'no. Si Bichronous kasi mas naka-focus nga siya dun sa concept ng time, okay? When the students are learning, when, the time of learning, okay? So, again, 'pag synchronous, we are learning with, a group, okay? When we are, ano 'no, when we are in asynchronous, we are learning by ourselves, okay? And engaging content 'no on, or acquiring skills 'no on our own. Okay? So, again, hindi sobra ano yung difference, pero ano siguro lang, okay? Mas umbrella term siguro si blended learning.
Okay.
Yes, no? Totoo yan, Teacher Pao, no? Nakakalito. Kasi ito yung pinakamalaking problema, and I think teachers can relate. When we enter the online learning setup, hindi ganun ka-strong yung support sa mga teachers natin. And that we have to admit that, no? Okay? Kasi lahat naman tayo were caught in a rush, okay? Our administrators were caught in a rush, our schools were caught in a rush, okay? There's actually no precedent, okay? Before this, okay? Prior to the pandemic, no? At that's the reason why nakakalito. Bigla mo na lang kailangang aralin, ano nga ba ang synchronous or asynchronous, okay? Or ano nga ba ang remote learning or online learning, etc. Lima ganong klase ng bagay, okay? That's the reason why we wanted to revisit, because maybe there are some things that we have to correct. Okay? When we talk about synchronous and asynchronous, and now bichronous learning or approach. Okay?
Okay.
Yes, no.
So, yeah. Sir Franco, there's this request from Sir Arnie. Please qualify the term blending from blended learning. I think Bichronous is blending asynchronous and
Yes. So,
asynchronous.
so
Then
more or less,
blended.
parang ano yung Teacher Pao, no? When we yeah, from our titles, the blending of, okay, we are purposively, and meaningfully combining, asynchronous and asynchronous. Siguro Teacher Pao, na para hindi lang malito yung mga teachers natin, okay? Let's forgo with the very technical terms, okay? Ang pinaka-idea nito, itong blended learning, flexi learning, tsaka bichronous learning, okay, is that we use different approaches and put them together, okay? So in this case, for example, in Bichronous, we're putting asynchronous and synchronous learning time, okay? In order to address yung mga loopholes ng isang single approach. Kasi yun nga yung medyo difficult, 'di ba? Kapag naka-synchronous ka lang, may drawbacks 'yan. Kapag naka-asynchronous ka lang, may drawbacks din 'yan. So what we do is to put them together, play the strengths of each other, to be able to patch yung mga loopholes natin. That's the same with blended, okay? You're doing blended learning, for example, in order, for example, to address yung problems ng kasi 'di ba lumabas yung mga blended learning such as flip learning, okay, wherein you are blending the face-to-face interaction at saka giving materials outside of your classes, okay? It's precisely because hindi kayang i-cover lahat ng content sa loob ng classroom. Okay, so what you do is to give the content outside of the classroom and then process the content inside the classroom. Okay? Yung yung klase ng blended approach mo. Okay? So essentially all of this, okay, ang commonalities nila sa Teacher Pao is that you are using multiple approaches, okay, in order to address yung needs ng approaches na yun or loopholes ng mga approaches na yun. Okay? So yan, Teacher
Yep.
Pao. Para lang din mahirapan. Okay, para, and again, it could
I
come in
think
different
there's
terms.
not.
Kasi yes, diba, sa research natin. Pero teachers, bottom line natin dyan is that when you talk about blended learning, when you talk about flexi learning, when you talk about bichronous learning, it's a combination of approaches, okay, that you are using. Para lang clear tayo. Okay, and we're on the same page.
Okay, while I try to scroll, I have my own question for you. While we also wait for the teachers, to key in your questions, so that we can make that part of the discussion. Um, while I was listening to you, I was thinking if, no, because you're planning, no. This has something to do with the timetable or the scheduling of the tasks of the kids, of the students, no. Do you have a specific time, or would you recommend a specific time for a specific subject such that they can work on their asynchronous task? Or
Um,
okay na lahat na ng
wala.
subject may async ka, meron bang specific time? Would you suggest that way?
Dapat wala, no? That actually defeats the purpose of asynchronous learning. If you set that very rigid time, no, where students have to work on a particular task, that actually defeats the idea of asynchronous. Teacher Pa, when we talk about asynchronous, it's really about giving your students no time to digest, no, and time to engage the content in a more I don't know, flexible way, okay? During their own time, okay? So instead of, for example, giving them rigid time, it's actually giving them yung nga sabi ko kanina, recommended pacing. Gaano ka dapat katagal sa session na to, okay? So our students could easily, for example, schedule it themselves. Okay, for example, on science, I have to work with. Kasi for example, Teacher Pao, no, nakikita ko is that maybe for example, for a student, I'd like to work on easy tasks first. So I'll work on the easy task of science, easy task of soc-sci, easy task of English and math, no, and then I'll move on to the harder task. Okay? That gives no yung students natin ng option on how they would like to engage with your activities. Okay? Kasi nga kapag nag-set ka ng time, okay, defeats the purpose of asynchronous. Para ka diyang nag-synchronous ng hindi naka-video conference. Kapag meron kang specific time na kailangan sa ganito itong ginagawa nyo at may submission kayo sa ganitong oras. Okay? So, yun din. Yung ingat tayo sa mga submissions because that could also dictate if our students can work, no, are actually working asynchronously. Teacher Pao, pwede mo yan tawagin, no, minsan yung mga ganyang approach or activities na mga pseudo-asynchronous. Namukha silang asynchronous kasi hindi kayo naka-video conference, pero technically, it requires the rigor or the pressure of a synchronous session. At yan yung gusto natin tanggalin, Teacher Pao, no? Kasi isa yan sa mga drawbacks ng synchronous na we can't always put our students in a pressured cooker, okay? Or pressure cooker para i-digest yung content, para i-accomplish yung task, etc. Yes.
Okay. All right.
Okay.
Sige. Just to add on, because this is something that I'm sure different schools would be venturing in sooner or later when we try to inch by inch go back to face to face, no. Definitely there will be that combination of different approaches. I was just thinking about I'd like to get your thoughts on this, no. So when we talk about asynchronous tasks, these are the tasks for student learning. But what if you need to get a specific feedback from them? So, di ba, self-paced learning na. How long? Or, pwede ka naman siguro mag-set ng deadline. No?
Yes, pwede naman, definitely.
Formative assessment. Siyempre, hindi mo naman mapapagawa sa loob ng klase, di ba? But, of course, deadlines can be set, no? Pero, dapat meron siyang digestion time. No, hindi po pwedeng tinuro mo ngayong umaga, mamayang hapon, o sige, basta gawin mo ha, tapos mamaya ipasa mo na. I think that defeats the purpose of async.
Ang key dyan, Sir Teacher Pao, no, ang pinakamagandang gawin dyan is whenever you design your asynchronous task, okay, it must be deliberately timed in your case. So, ikaw ang nag-iisip ng oras. Okay? So, for example, gagawa ako ng asynchronous for this day kasi ano rin naman Teacher Pao, 'di ba? Kahit yung mga asynchronous natin, meron din yung delegated days. For example, yung students natin should be working on asynchronous tasks, science, math, and English. Can assign say asynchronous tasks every Tuesday or every Thursday, something like that. Okay? So if you are the teacher, no, ang goal mo dapat diyan kapag nagde-design ka ng activity mo is that how long will my students accomplish this? Okay? I'm not going to say if they have to accomplish this in like strictly in that time, pero how long? Okay? So for example, if I'm going to actually get a deadline by, for example, you need to submit this work by 5 p.m. Wala ka namang binigay na ano, pwede mo i-work from 8 AM to 5 PM. Asynchronous pa rin yan, self-paced pa rin yan. Pero binibigyan mo lang ng discipline yung student mo na meron kang isa-submit or deliverable by 5 PM. Are we restricting the students doing that? No. Kasi ang full day pa rin yung binigay mo. Parang ano lang yung teacher Pao, no? Para sa class naman natin, 'di ba, yung mga submissions natin more or less, 'di ba, within 5 before 5 din 'yan. Okay, so you can actually assign that, no. Ang crucial lang diyan siguro teacher Pao is that as a teacher, as an educator, you'll have to make sure that the task is doable in that period of time. That I can actually, no, hindi siya pwedeng i-assume mo na bibigay ko tong task na to, sasabitin nila ng 5, yung palang task kailangan ma-accomplish mo by for 4 hours or 5 hours of combined work. So, kailangan nakapasok siya doon. So, ini-imagine po, for example, yung asynchronous ng students ko, doable in 1 hour. Pwedeng i-chunk ng students ko, hindi naman niya kailangan i-dire-diretso, pero at the end of the day, yung mga task ko na yan at yung mga deliverables ko, doable yan in an hour. Okay? I'm just going to give him enough time to budget his time all throughout the day and give my submissions at the end of the day. That's your asynchronous. Okay?
Okay. There's a question here, Sir Franco, that I ask to you, no? Given that this is from Ms. May Versosa, given that students have the needed infrastructure, so complete now, what is the foremost consideration in scheduling a Bichronous approach? For example, competencies, learning readiness, or other things?
Actually, that by planning or by designing your Bichronous, okay, that in itself will provide a very good structure. Okay? Why so? Kasi pag meron tayong combination ng synchronous and asynchronous, no, it allows you to really solidify yung learning process, okay, by providing synchronous sessions where feedbacks and interactions are given. Okay? At the same time, you give them asynchronous wherein VPEN, okay, enriched interaction and engagement with the content is given. Is there like a specific time or ways to schedule your Bichronous? Okay? I can't really say for a definite answer to that, no, teacher Pao. Pero for me, the most the consideration dyan is for me the complexity of the skill and the lesson. Okay? So say for example, if I'm going to deliver a very complex concept, okay, or skill that I want my students to learn, okay, I will definitely use Bichronous approach. Okay, so kasi for example, if it's a simple concept or issue, teacher Pao, I could easily deliver that in synchronous session. I could talk about it, discuss it, and then give activities to it. Pero for example, sobrang complex, okay, I will definitely combine synchronous and asynchronous so that I could make sure that there's a transfer of knowledge, okay? Plus, if it's a skill, they get to practice the skill all throughout, in both synchronous and asynchronous. Okay, so I'm really going after complexity of lesson and complexity of my of the skill. Okay, at ipapasok mo na rin yung siyempre, teacher Pao, yung yung levels of your learning ng level of your learners. Kasi if for example, the concept is too complex, okay? Hindi kayang i-digest kagad in one sitting, then you definitely have to chunk it into different approach, again, Bichronous approach for your lessons, okay? But again, teacher Pao, hindi talaga siya for me, hindi siya pwedeng pagpili-pili lang, okay? For me talaga, it's always a combination, mostly a combination of synchronous and asynchronous. Your synchronous and asynchronous must complement each other, no? There must be a connection. Hindi siya kailangan, teacher Pao, na per lesson, pero nakita mo, teacher Pao, yung building up of connection. Okay, so for example, kapag nag-synchronous ka ngayon, okay, dapat may sense of build up ka for the asynchronous. Okay, like example, kahit simple instruction, sasabihin mo yung mga students mo na, okay, class, okay, these are the things you're going to do for your asynchronous. Okay? That builds a connection right away. May kinalaman ba sa lesson maybe? Baka wala naman. Okay? Pero, nabibuild mo yung connection. Okay? Or, for example, nagpadala ka ng asynchronous activities. Okay, class, dun sa instruction mo sa asynchronous, okay, class, make sure that you do these activities because these are the things we're going to process and we're going to enrich in our synchronous. So yun yung pag-uusapan natin. So kapag hindi sila nagbasa, for example, nanonood ng mga videos sa asynchronous mo, bokya sila or mahirapan sila dun sa synchronous session mo. So again, connection yung gusto natin. The connection is what blends synchronous and asynchronous. Okay? Yun. Okay?
Okay.
Well, teachers, again, no pressure. Wag tayo ma-pressure, no? You've been doing this already. Kailangan nyo lang i-retake, i-practice, no? Conscious. Ang siguro keyword dito, Teacher Pao, is deliberate and really, purposively designed ang ating mga asynchronous and synchronous sessions. And in that way, I know teachers, no, kapag purposively and deliberately designed yung mga asynchronous and synchronous sessions natin, it will flow and you will not know that you are already doing a blended Bichronous approach. Kasi yun lang minsan nakakalimutan natin, sobrang rush natin minsan, nakakalimutan natin i-blend no yung approaches natin.
Okay. So I
Yes,
think these are all thank yous, no? Thank yous. Miss Versosas actually reiterated that if the teacher is a master of his or her own content and the students know what they actually need, then it will really help in planning, no? Ayan sir, may humabol na question. Ano naman po ang tips na mabibigay nyo if ang hawak nyo ay 6 sections plus advisory class at bawat section ay merong online, modular asynchronous, at may pure modular talaga? Ayan ang challenge.
Una, Teacher Charito, ay pagpupugay sa iyo at isang maraming salamat sa sa sakripisyo mo kasi napakahirap niyang ginagawa ni Teacher Charito, no. And I know a lot of teachers also like that, no, Teacher Pao, okay? Pero Teacher Pao, ito yung sa mga discuss ko kanina about your adaptive design. Okay? So sa una pa lang, dapat iniisip mo na kagad 'yon, that your designs should be adaptive, okay? So since meron ka Teacher Charito na pure online, you can actually start from there, okay? So start from a pure online design, okay? And then when you design that, no, you're going to have a conscious effort that when you're designing your pure online activities, that these are activities that can be repurposed in other modalities para hindi po kayo nahihirapan. Perfect example, Teacher Pao, okay? If I have a pure online class, no, so pwede ako, for example, ang delivery ko sa lesson ko is, I can, say for example, watch a video or pwede ako mag-present ng concepts, no, okay? Now, if I'm going to put that in a modular, no, section, I can now, for example, maybe, okay, break down into handouts that presentation, okay? So I will flesh that out, no, into a presentation which my students can view in a PDF form, okay? So that can be viewed, no, in a modular asynchronous manner, okay? Now, for the modular printed one, I could easily print like the handouts or even the presentation itself, okay? That no, again, ang idea then is that sa start pa lang dapat hindi siya pwedeng post concern na na-design mo na lahat, okay? At sa dulo mo lang isipin na paano ko nga ba ibibigay ko sa online class ko or ibibigay ko sa aking modular class or ibibigay ko sa ano ko. So yan, Teacher Pao, no, yung marshmallow test na tinatawag natin. Isa yun sa mga favorite activities ko pagdating sa design thinking. Kung saan pag pinagawa kita Teacher Pao ng ng tower, okay? Ano lang, hypothetically, dapat talaga ginagawa to, no? Pero hypothetically, Teacher Pao, for example, if I challenge you to build a tower out of sticks, no, using tape, sticks, okay? And then at the end of dapat pag na-construct mo yung Teacher Pao, malagay mo yung marshmallow sa taas. Ano ang una mong gagawin, Teacher Pao? Quick answer. Hindi mo kailangan mag-isip ngayon. Quick answer. Kailangan mo gumawa ng tower. Contest to contest, pataasan ng tower. Tapos kailangan may marshmallow sa taas. Ano una mong gagawin?
Kukunin ko muna yung tape.
Tape, diba? Tapos iti-tape mo yung mga sticks, diba? Tapos kukonstruct ka na.
Yes,
diba?
yes.
Yun yung mali natin doon. Kasi, in most cases, Teacher Pao, lahat ng gumawa niyan failed to do the marshmallow test. Ang dapat unang ginagawa doon is, kino-consider mo muna yung marshmallow so that you can consider the weight of the marshmallow that will be supported by your structure. Same with our lessons, teachers, no? Kailangan sa start pa lang, iniisip mo na kagad ano yung mga modalities mo, ano yung mga estudyante mo, paano nila ito ma-process, okay? So that your design at the start is adaptive enough, no, to actually stand, no, and do what it's supposed to do. Okay? So yung marshmallow test. I also failed that. Okay? I realized na, oo nga, no, bakit nga ba hindi ko binuild yung tower, no, with the marshmallow in mind. Okay? So always do that. Okay? At the start of the planning. Okay?
Yes, yes. Agree, agree. Na parang lahat ngayon kasi kung makikita mo, dami-dami, I think, no? Our teachers know more, no, with regards to the different pedagogies, running around, and challenging this the whole education system, not only here in the Philippines, but all over the world, no? But the question is, you just really have to pick your own battle, no? Parang hindi ka susugod kasi sinabing gano'n, 'di ba? So, talagang aaralin mo, no? And
Yes.
I'm sure even if there are prescribed ways by your school, kasi sinasabi ng iba, kasi sabi ng school namin ganito yung gagawin, paano hindi ka makagawa. There's always that way, no? How you can probably adjust. Yun nga sabi ni Sir, no? You just have to blend it really together by really planning it sa start.
Yes.
Yeah.
Teacher Pao, medyo umaaray yung mga teachers natin doon sa idea ng planning kasi talagang, well, essential talaga kaya lang talagang walang oras na minsan yung mga teachers natin that we are swamped with the documents, no? So teachers Pao, ako personally, I sometimes I really work, I definitely also work hard, no? But I always work smarter din, okay? Kaya minsan, ang talaga nakakatulong sa akin, no, kapag medyo gipit ako sa oras and kailangan, what I do is that I always have that matrix, yung pinakita ko kanina. Okay, so regardless, for example, kapag nahirapan ako, for example, for planning or ng lesson, mag-splash out ng lesson plans ko, alam ko nasa right track pa rin ako kasi meron akong proper matrix sa sinusundan. Okay? Of course, it could come later yung lesson plans. It could be something that pwede mo na. Pero at least meron kang guide, no, all throughout your semester. Yung pinakita ko, Teacher Pao, that's a matrix for an entire semester. Okay, so sa classes ko sa Ateneo. Okay, so wala na akong hindi ako basta-basta maliligaw. Okay?
It's that backbone eh. Parang yun yung sinimulan mo,
Oo.
yun yung backbone mo. Kumbaga sa building yan yung mga yung mga bakal mo muna na pang setup yun. Para at least hindi pa kumpleto lahat ng resources mo. Medyo alam mo na eh. Alam mo na kung saan ka pupunta. Yeah.
Correct. Okay. So yun. Okay. So
Yeah.
teachers, we'll talk more about yung mga questions niyo po. We still have like around 14 minutes. Okay? Pero we'll just give you first your evaluation link para po iba makapag-evaluate na po. No? We can still discuss and talk about this. No? Pwede pa kaming magbalik-taktakan ni teacher po. Ang dami pang pwedeng pag-usapan dito. Okay? Pero we'll just give you your evaluation link para yung pong mga may mga iba pang gagawin, you can already evaluate, okay, for your certificates, no? And teachers, no, bago tayo mag-evaluate, please be reminded, no, and we invite you for the last part of our September series. That's going to be on September 30 on OneNote. Okay. Teacher Pao, may maganda pala ako, may good news pala ako, no? Ang ating trainer, si Miss Jinky, ating in-house Microsoft expert trainer, no, I have been contacted, no, by the project manager of Microsoft. Okay, so we're going to expect more projects, no, hopefully with Miss Jinky, no, as our trainer. Okay, so September 30. Okay?
Talaga ang Adon family.
Yes. Yan. So teachers, na po ang inyong evaluation link. It's https://tinyurl.com/recharge06. You also have your QR code. I hope it works. I did check that kanina. So teacher Pao, no, magbigay pa tayo ng mga examples para sa mga teachers na how synchronous and asynchronous blending can be done. Okay? Ang perfect example ng teacher Pao is when we assign videos, okay? Sa mga students natin. Ito yung sa common mistake ng ating some of our educators, no? That when you assign videos, okay? it's a standalone material. Okay, that's usually what happens. Okay, it's example nilalagay sa module or pinapadala sa mga students. No, okay. When you assign, for example, videos teacher Pao, okay, there are two ways not to blend. Kasi for example, videos is asynchronous, definitely, no. Ang hirap ibigay sa synchronous yan kasi mabigat sa bandwidth. Okay, so what you can do is that when you're doing video, it's either you give questions, okay, with the video para they can really enrich their understanding of the video. Okay. Second is that to blend it with your synchronous, make sure that it's either it will be processed on your next synchronous session. So there should be that processing. So kung meron kang questions na tinanong doon, okay, kailangan mong sagutin yun, no, with the students. Okay? Hindi siya pwedeng nagbigay tayo ng video, okay? Kung okay, nagbigay tayo ng questions, so kailangan mo siyang i-process. In that way, you're actually able to maybe give feedback kung tama nga ba yung sagot nila kasi mamaya mali yung sagot nila dun sa processing questions. So, forever nang mali yung understanding nila on that one. Okay? So, it could take, for example, Teacher Pao, like 5 minutes, 10 minutes of your synchronous session to process your asynchronous materials. Okay? Siyempre, no, alam natin yung pag-flip ng learning, no, by giving materials ahead of time. Okay? Example, reading materials. Okay? So make sure then, for example, kapag nag-assign tayo ng reading materials, that we actually incorporate that in our lesson. Like, example, kung may presentation ka, ginamit mo talaga yung reading material na yun. Okay? Para makita talaga ng students na may relevance yun, bakit ako nagbasa ng reading material na to. Kasi mamaya, nagbasa tayo ng napakahabang article, for example, and we've experienced the Teacher Pao in college, no? And then, asan to sa lessons natin? Parang hindi naman siya lumalabas sa lessons natin. Something like that. No? So that promotes the connections for our students. Okay? And they will also see a sense of why I need to do asynchronous. Kasi sa pinaka nila, bakit ko gagawin itong asynchronous? Uulitin lang ni teacher yan sa synchronous. Yun ang teachers wag natin gagawin. No? It must really be designed well so that our students do not see and experience repetition. If they see repetition in your asynchronous and synchronous, they will either disengage in your synchronous or they will disengage in your asynchronous. Either way, they will disengage either way. Okay? Kasi alam nila, bakit ko isipin na Teacher Pao, di ba? Bakit ako makikinig sa'yo, for example, sa synchronous mo? Alam ko ilalagay mo din yan sa aking asynchronous. Okay? Or, bakit ko gagawin yung asynchronous kung sinabi mo naman na lahat sa akin? Or, nasabihin mo rin naman yun sa presentation, right? Something like that. No? Let's avoid that situation.
Actually, yeah, I totally agree with what you've been saying. And if done right, no, we can really save time, no, with the presence of this, no, with the presence of multiple approaches to how dati kasi 'di ba talagang pagpasok lang yun lang talaga. Hindi pa tayo na sobrang na-open sa ganito, yung blended nga before, yung mga nagbe-blended, yun yung nakikita natin talaga na innovative. But when you look at it, when done right, you can actually save time. You can even cover more content, no, that we usually tell, no. Actually, we've been practicing kasi synchronous and asynchronous in our school, and the challenge there is there's not enough time for me to be able to discuss everything to the students, but face it, we cannot really teach everything now that we're online. We cannot expect the same length of time that we have as in face-to-face. No, it's definitely shorter. That's why there's that presence of asynchronous. And if done right, the activities there, that should supplement already for some of the topics that can actually be done asynchronously. So, yun. Kasi talagang, ang kalaban mo talaga dyan is the time. Na parang, ang umikli. I mean, sino ba ang same lang yung time na nami-meet mo yung student synchronously? Definitely not the modular, no? Kasi talagang total nawala yon. Pero those who are doing online, it's not even the same time that you have sa school because that's violating the screen time. 'Di ba may limit din dapat na sa screen ka eh. So you cannot really do that. So doing asynchronous correctly in conjunction blended with synchronous will really save time.
Totoo. Yes. Actually, teachers ano yan 'no, measurement yan. 'Pag daw ubusan kayo ng oras sa synchronous niyo, ibig sabihin hindi natin na-utilize mo ng maayos ang ating asynchronous aspect ng ating online learning, okey? At kung, sa asynchronous naman natin ay hindi natin na-accomplish yung mga tasks natin, then maybe, nagkukulang tayo ng ano, ng support, okay, coming from our synchronous session, okay? So when you properly blended the 2 'no, sabi nga Teacher Pao, you will save time, you will increase student, yung engagement, okay? You will also, see improvement 'no, in performance of your students, okay? So yun yung ano natin. That's why, blending together is really ano,
Important.
the way to go, okay? Kaya ano yan, blending 'no, not just using. Gusto ko
Yes,
emphasize
so
talaga yun, important na ma-emphasize na.
correct. Ako naman, Sir Franco, ang talagang pinaka nakikita ko dito 'no, it is a challenge for teachers. But more than that, it's a challenge to the students, which kailangan din sila talaga yung kailangan nating i-guide. Kasi feeling ko sobrang bago sa kanila, lalo na 'pag walang disiplina ang bata. No, papasok yan ng hindi ginagawa yung synchronous task niya. No,
Yes.
pero the students now, they are challenged with their self-management skills. No, yun yung soft skills na medyo tinouch ngayon ng ano ng pandemyang ito. Paano magsu-survive ang isang bata? Yung iba ayaw nitong online kahit nasa bahay sila kasi wala daw tumututok sa kanila or parang hindi sila parang gusto nila kasi yung may bantay. Merong ganong klaseng student na I can only work if I'm under direct supervision. But it's not But it's not. So, aside from the content that we're teaching, we really have to teach our students the discipline. But we have to provide them scaffolds so that they can survive. So, yung stress ko lang yung point ni Sir Franco na before giving out any asynchronous task, please make sure that you've discussed it with the students. Or else you'll end up students just emailing you back and forth, "Teacher, I don't understand what we're supposed to do." Kasi dapat clarificatory questions na lang yung yung lalabas dun sa asynchronous task natin.
Yes, correct, no? At ano siyempre Teacher Pao 'no, that's also a reflection din dapat natin mga teachers 'no, yung for example, okay, bakit si student hindi nag-e-engage sa asynchronous, okay? Kasi nga baka nga disconnected, okay? Or baka the asynchronous is too hard or too difficult for them to actually do it on their own, okay? Baka kailangan pa nila ng tulong, okay? So while it will not always fall no all of this no burden to our teachers, as burden to our teachers, pero let's also do our part, okay? So let's make sure that our tasks are doable, okay, independently by our students. Kapag sobrang difficult ang task natin, that it actually requires a parent, then it will start no like a precedent no to our students na I just have to always ask my parents help, okay? Pero if the students feel dahil naka-scaffolding task at na-build natin yung confidence nila that they can actually survive without an assistance from their parents or a tutor, they will find themselves doing things on their own. Okay, ideally Teacher Pao, pero we'll have to stay hopeful with that with that idea, okay? For us teachers, okay? So let's just design it with that in mind.
Totally agree.
Okay, good. So, teachers, maraming salamat. And again, thank you for joining us today, and for having us once again in this session. For those who are having a hard time accessing, please take note that it's 06, not 06. No, baka lang po O yung nilalagay natin, baka magkamali. Pag hindi po nahirapan po talaga tayo, just scan the QR code para mas madali niyo pong ma-access yung ating link. Kasi because others were already able to access it. Okay? So Teacher Pao, maraming salamat again. And again, thank you for being with me today, in this session and giving all your insights as well to our teachers, who have been giving their insights. Thank you and maraming salamat. And again, happy weekend, teachers. Teacher Pao, you have a message or reminders to our teachers?
Pleasure to be here, and KTS won't be able to thank you enough and our teachers for sharing your generous time. Bakit wala kang pa-certificate? Ilabas mo yung certificate mo dyan. I'd like to present the certificate of gratitude to you, no, for always sharing your thoughts, your time, your expertise, no, kung saan-saan talaga makikita si Sir Franco at kitang-kita mo na biblend niya lahat ng ginagawa niya. Agree ba tayo, teachers? Type kayo dyan, di ba? From Google to Bichronous, di ba? Ang dami-daming nabe-blend ni Sir Franco. Yan. So thank you so much, Sir Franco, and to all our teachers also for tuning in.
Maraming salamat, teachers, again, for being us. Again, teachers, kung may mga kailangan po kayo, just let us know, just message us, no, okay? So maraming salamat po. Happy weekend, teachers, and always stay safe and negative, no, from the COVID-19.